Hello everyone, and welcome to tonight's extended tale on Pillow Tale Studio, the channel where we're going to dive into some historical mysteries you've never heard before, hidden truths, and extraordinary discoveries. Before we get started, please take a moment to comment and let us know, where are you watching from? What time is it for you? And are you enjoying your day so far? If you haven't already, please subscribe to Pillow Tale Studio so you never miss another journey into the unknown. Now, let's get to the story. Story 1. The Anasazi Cliff Dwellings. The sun hung low over the arid expanse of the American Southwest, casting long shadows across the rust-red cliffs of southern Colorado. Dust swirled in lazy eddies, carried by a wind that whispered secrets older than the rocks themselves. Dr. Evelyn Harper adjusted her wide-brimmed hat, squinting against the glare as she traced her fingers along the jagged edge of a petroglyph carved into the canyon wall. The swirling lines and cryptic figures: a spiral sun, a skeletal hand, a horned figure with hollow eyes seemed to pulse faintly under her touch, as if the stone remembered the hands that shaped it 1,000 years ago. An archaeologist by trade, Evelyn had spent her career chasing the ghosts of the Anasazi, the ancient Pueblo people who vanished from these cliffs in the 13th century, leaving behind their cliffside cities like abandoned dreams. But this site, hidden deep in a maze of canyons near Mesa Verde, was different. It wasn't on any map. It wasn't in any journal. It had come to her through a tip, an unsigned letter slipped under her office door at the University of Denver. Written in a shaky hand, "Find the Red Hollow. The truth is waiting." Evelyn's boots crunched against the gravel as she descended a narrow switchback trail, her graduate assistant, Miguel Torres, trailing behind with a backpack slung over one shoulder. He was a wiry kid, barely 25, with a mop of black hair and a skepticism that bordered on cynicism. "You sure about this, Doc?" he called, his voice echoing off the canyon walls. "This place feels off, like we're trespassing on something that doesn't want us here." She didn't answer right away, her eyes fixed on the shadowed recess ahead, a massive overhang where the cliff curved inward like a cupped hand. Beneath it, half buried in sand and time, stood the ruins of a pueblo, crumbling adobe walls, circular kivas sunk into the earth, and a towering stone archway etched with symbols that matched the petroglyphs. Her pulse quickened. This wasn't just another site. This was the site, the Red Hollow. The letter had promised answers to the Anasazi's disappearance, not drought, not war, but something stranger, something tied to the stars and the spirits they revered. "Off or not, Miguel?" she said finally, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "This could rewrite everything we know about the ancestral Puebloans." "Grab the gear. We're going in." They set up camp beneath the overhang as dusk painted the sky in streaks of violet and gold. Miguel unpacked their tools, cameras, brushes, a portable spectrometer, while Evelyn knelt before the archway, brushing away centuries of dust. The symbols glowed faintly in the fading light. A spiral, a horned figure, and something new, a jagged line piercing a circle, like a spear through a sun. She frowned, sketching it in her notebook. It wasn't a known Anasazi motif. It felt foreign, invasive. That night, as the desert chill settled in, Evelyn pored over her notes by lantern light, the silence broken only by the crackle of their small fire. Miguel sat cross-legged, scrolling through photos on his tablet. "These kivas are weird," he muttered. "Too deep, too narrow, like they weren't built for people." "Ceremonial," Evelyn suggested, though doubt gnawed at her. The kivas were strange, more like shafts than rooms, their walls lined with niches that held nothing but shadows. She'd seen kivas before, sacred spaces where the Anasazi communed with their Kachina spirits, but these felt claustrophobic, almost punitive. Maybe they were sealed for a reason. "Sealed?" Miguel raised an eyebrow. "You think there's something down there?" Before she could answer, a low hum vibrated through the ground, so faint she thought she'd imagined it. Then it came again, louder, a thrumming pulse that rattled the pebbles around their camp. Miguel bolted upright, his eyes wide. What the hell was that? Evelyn grabbed her flashlight and aimed it at the nearest kiva. The beam caught a glint of something metallic at the bottom, a flat, circular object half buried in the silt. Against her better judgment, she climbed down, her boots slipping on the ladder's worn rungs. The air grew thick, heavy with a scent of earth and something acrid, like burnt sage. At the bottom, she brushed away the dirt, revealing a disc of polished obsidian, its surface etched with the same symbols as the archway. But there was more, a ring of tiny angular markings, precise and geometric, like a script no human hand could have carved. "Miguel, get down here!" she shouted, her voice trembling with excitement. He scrambled down, nearly dropping his tablet as he landed. Together, they lifted the disc, its weight surprising for its size. As they tilted it toward the light, the markings shimmered, casting faint, shifting patterns on the kiva walls, stars, constellations, a jagged line slicing through them. "It's a star map," Evelyn breathed. "But not ours, not any sky I've ever seen." The hum returned, louder now, a bone-deep vibration that made her teeth ache. The disc grew warm in her hands, then scalding. She dropped it with a yelp, and it hit the ground with a dull thud, the patterns flaring brighter. Above them, the kiva's entrance darkened as a shadow passed over it, a figure cloaked in black, its face obscured by a hood. Evelyn's heart lurched. They weren't alone. "Who's there?" Miguel yelled, his voice cracking. The figure didn't answer. Instead, it raised a hand, and the hum became a roar, shaking the walls. Dust rained down, and Evelyn grabbed Miguel's arm, dragging him toward the ladder. But the rungs snapped under their weight, crumbling like dry clay. They were trapped. The figure descended, moving with an unnatural grace, its cloak billowing despite the still air. Up close, Evelyn saw the glint of a pendant around its neck, a spiral sun, identical to the petroglyphs. "You shouldn't have come," it rasped, its voice like wind through dead leaves. The hollow guards its own. "Who are you?" Evelyn demanded, her fear warring with her need to understand. "What is this place?" The figure tilted its head, as if amused. "The Anasazi didn't leave, the Asen did. This is their gate, and you've woken it." Before she could process the words, the disc flared again, bathing the kiva in blinding light. The walls shimmered, revealing carvings she hadn't seen before, figures in horned masks, hands raised to a sky ablaze with falling stars. A prophecy, etched in stone. When the spear pierces the sun, the kachinas return. The air crackled with energy, and Evelyn felt a pull, a tugging at her very core, as if something ancient and vast was stirring. The cloaked figure stepped closer, its pendant glowing. "You've seen too much," it said, "but not enough." It reached into its cloak and produced a small, weathered journal, tossing it at her feet. "Read, decide. The society will be watching." With that, it vanished, dissolving into the shadows as the light faded. The hum subsided, leaving only silence and the pounding of Evelyn's heart. She picked up the journal, its leather cover cracked and stained. Inside, in a spidery script, were accounts of the Anasazi's final days, not drought or famine, but a ritual, a pact with beings they called the Watchers from the broken sky. The disc, the kivas, the prophecy, it was all tied to a celestial event, a meteor shower due in 3 days, the first in centuries to match the carvings. Miguel stared at her, pale and shaking. "What do we do, Doc?" "That thing. It's not human." Evelyn clutched the journal, her mind racing. The society, whoever they were, knew she was here. The disc was active, the prophecy unfolding. She could walk away, pretend this never happened, or she could dig deeper, chase the truth, even if it meant facing the kachinas themselves. "We climb out," she said, her voice firm, "and we figure out what's coming." They rigged a rope from Miguel's gear and hauled themselves up, emerging into a night sky unnaturally bright with stars. The archway loomed behind them, its symbols glowing faintly, as if watching. In the distance, a coyote howled, a sound too human, too knowing. Evelyn opened the journal again, her flashlight illuminating a final line. The hollow calls. The spear falls. The world bends. She looked at Miguel, then at the disc still lying in the kiva below. "Get the spectrometer," she said. "We're not done here." Evelyn's hands trembled as she flipped through the journal's brittle pages, the lantern casting jagged shadows across the kiva's rim where she and Miguel now sat. The night air bit at their skin, sharp and unforgiving, but the chill couldn't compete with the fire in her chest. The words she'd read, "Watchers from the broken sky," "The spear falls," looped through her mind like a mantra, each syllable heavy with implications she couldn't yet grasp. The spectrometer hummed beside her, its screen flickering as Miguel calibrated it to scan the obsidian disc still lying at the kiva's base. Whatever this artifact was, it wasn't just a relic. It was alive, responding to something, maybe the stars, maybe them. "Doc, this thing's off the charts," Miguel said, his voice tight. He tilted the screen toward her, revealing a mess of spiking wavelengths, ultraviolet, infrared, even traces of radiation no natural stone should emit. "It's like it's broadcasting, or listening." Evelyn nodded, her eyes drifting to the sky. The stars seemed sharper tonight, unnaturally vivid, as if the desert's thin air had peeled back a veil. She'd studied archaeoastronomy, knew the Anasazi tracked solstices and constellations with eerie precision, but this felt different. The journal's prophecy gnawed at her. A meteor shower, a spear piercing the sun, due in 3 days. She'd checked her phone earlier, no signal out here, but she'd seen the astronomical alerts before they left Denver. A rare shower, the Perseids' lesser-known cousin, was indeed peaking soon. Coincidence? She didn't believe in those anymore. "We need to move the disc," she decided, standing abruptly. "Get it under better light. Cross-reference these markings with the journal. If it's a star map, we can match it to something, maybe figure out what the Anasazi saw." Miguel hesitated, his gaze flicking to the kiva's shadowed depths. "What about that thing? The society? They're watching us, Evelyn. You heard it." "I know," she said, her jaw tightening. "But we're not running. Not yet." They rigged a pulley with their climbing rope, lowering Miguel back into the kiva to secure the disc. He moved fast, his breaths shallow as he looped the cord around the artifact. Evelyn hauled it up, grunting against its weight, until it rested on the canyon floor beside her. Up close, the obsidian gleamed like liquid night, its etched symbols pulsing faintly with each shift of her flashlight. The jagged line the spear cut through a circle that now looked less like a sun and more like a planet, ringed with smaller dots. Satellites, moons. Her mind raced with possibilities, each more improbable than the last. As Miguel climbed out, the ground shivered again, not the bone-rattling hum from before, but a subtler tremor, like a heartbeat stirring beneath the earth. They froze, exchanging a glance. Then, from the canyon's edge, a rustle boots on gravel, deliberate and slow. Evelyn swung her flashlight up, catching a glint of steel in the darkness. A man stepped into view, his face weathered and angular, framed by a graying beard. He wore a duster coat, the spiral sun pendant dangling at his chest. Behind him stood 2 others, their features obscured by hoods, each carrying what looked like rifles slung low. "Dr. Harper," the man said, his voice rough as sandstone. "You're a long way from your lecture halls." Evelyn's grip tightened on the flashlight. "Who are you? How do you know my name?" "Name's Gideon," he replied, tipping his head slightly. "As for how well, the Society's been keeping tabs on you since you started sniffing around Anasazi sites. Most folks don't dig this deep. Most don't get letters." Her stomach dropped. The unsigned note, "Find the red hollow," hadn't been a random tip. It was bait. "You sent it," she said, not a question. Gideon smirked, a thin, crooked thing. "Had to see if you'd bite. And here you are, waking things best left asleep." His eyes flicked to the disc, narrowing. "That's not yours to take." "It's not yours either," Miguel shot back, stepping forward despite the quake in his voice. "This is a find an archaeological treasure. It belongs in a museum, not some cult's basement." Gideon's smirk faded. "Boy, you've got no idea what you're holding. That's no trinket. It's a key. And you're turning it in a lock you can't close." "A key to what?" Evelyn demanded, her curiosity overriding her fear. "The journal mentions watchers, a gate. What did the Anasazi do here?" Gideon studied her for a long moment, then gestured to the archway. "They bargained. Back in 1299, when the rains failed and the clans turned on each other, the priests didn't just pray to the Kachinas. They called something bigger, something from out there." He pointed skyward. "The Watchers came, offered a way out. Ascension, they called it. Took the people, left the cliffs empty. That disc, it's what they used to signal him." Evelyn's mind spun. The Anasazi disappearance had stumped scholars for centuries: drought, migration, warfare, all theories with holes. But this was insanity. Yet the disc's strange energy, the carvings, the timing, it fit too well. "You're saying they left Earth with aliens?" "Not my words," Gideon said. "Theirs. The Kachinas were just masks for what they couldn't explain. And now you've got the signal running again." As if on cue, the disc flared, its light bathing the canyon in a cold, blue glow. The air thickened, buzzing with static. Evelyn stumbled back, her flashlight dropping as the symbols on the archway ignited, mirroring the disc's patterns. Above, the stars seemed to shift, a faint streak cutting across the sky, a meteor. Too early, too bright. "They're coming," one of Gideon's hooded companions muttered, raising his rifle. "We need to shut it down." "No," Gideon snapped, his hand shooting out. "We wait. The prophecy's clear: when the spear falls, the gate opens. We've guarded this place for generations. We don't stop it now." Evelyn's pulse hammered. "You're insane. If this is real, we're not ready for whatever's on the other side." Gideon turned to her, his eyes glinting with something feral. "Ready or not, it's here. Question is, Dr. Harper, are you with us or against us?" Before she could answer, the ground buckled, a crack splitting the kiva's edge. The disc lifted, hovering inches above the dirt, its hum now a deafening wail. Shadows twisted in the canyon, shapes too tall, too angular to be human, flickering at the edge of sight. Miguel grabbed her arm, his face pale. "Evelyn, we need to go. Now," but she couldn't move, rooted by the sight of the archway pulsing, its stone rippling like water. A figure emerged, not Gideon's society, not the Kachinas of Pueblo lore, but something else, a silhouette of light and shadow, its form shifting, its eyes twin voids. It raised a hand, and the journal in Evelyn's grip burned, pages curling to ash. Words echoed in her skull, not heard but felt, the hollow calls. "You are the bridge." The meteor streaked closer, a spear of fire piercing the night. The gate was opening, and Evelyn stood at its threshold, torn between the scholar's thirst for truth and the human instinct to flee. Gideon's voice cut through the chaos. "Choose, Harper. Time's up." Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as the figure of light and shadow loomed closer, its presence a weight that pressed against her chest. The air vibrated with a sound she couldn't name, half scream, half song rising from the disc as it spun faster, its edges blurring into a halo of blue fire. The canyon walls trembled, shedding dust and pebbles that danced in the unearthly glow. Miguel's grip on her arm tightened, his nails digging into her skin. "Evelyn, please," he hissed, his voice cracking. "We're out of our depth. We need to run." But running felt impossible. The figure's void-like eyes pinned her in place, boring into her soul with a cold, ancient curiosity. The words burned in her mind again. "You are the bridge," and she stumbled back, her boots skidding on loose gravel. The journal's ashes slipped through her fingers, carried away by a wind that howled from nowhere. Gideon and his society lackeys stood their ground, rifles raised but useless against the thing emerging from the archway. The hooded pair shifted nervously, their whispers drowned by the disk's wail, while Gideon's face twisted into a grin equal parts awe and madness. "Stand down," Evelyn shouted at him, her voice nearly lost in the chaos. "You don't know what you're summoning." "I know enough," Gideon roared back, his pendant flaring as if in sync with the disk. The Watchers promised power ascension. The Anasazi took it. Now it's our turn. The figure tilted its head, a gesture almost human, and the ground split wider, a jagged fissure racing toward the kiva. Evelyn yanked Miguel aside as the earth buckled, the spectrometer tumbling into the abyss with a metallic clatter. Above, the meteor blazed brighter, its tail a fiery spear slicing through the constellation-riddled sky. The prophecy's words echoed in her memory. When the spear pierces the sun, the Kachinas return. But this wasn't a sun. It was something else, something alive in the heavens, and the spear was aimed straight for it. The figure stepped fully through the archway, its form solidifying into a towering shape 7 feet tall, its limbs too long, its surface shimmering like molten glass threaded with veins of shadow. A second followed, then a third, their movements synchronized, silent, but for the hum that pulsed from their core. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of ozone and something sweeter, like rotting flowers. Evelyn's flashlight flickered and died, plunging them into the disk's eerie glow. "Doc," Miguel yelled, dragging her toward the canyon trail. "We're not fighting this." But Gideon had other plans. He lunged for the disk, his hands outstretched, chanting words in a tongue Evelyn didn't recognize, harsh, guttural, older than the Anasazi themselves. The figures turned toward him, their void eyes narrowing, and a sound like shattering glass ripped through the night. Gideon froze mid-step, his body jerking as if struck. His pendant exploded in a burst of light, and he collapsed, clawing at his chest, blood bubbling from his lips. The society men fired, their rifles barking in futile bursts, but the bullets dissolved into sparks against the figure's glassy skin. Evelyn's instincts screamed at her to flee, but her mind, her damn stubborn mind, clung to the mystery. These were the Watchers, the beings the Anasazi had bargained with. The disk was their key, the hollow their gate, and she'd activated it. "You are the bridge." The phrase clawed at her, insistent, as the figures advanced, their steps slow but relentless. One raised a hand and the disk's spin faltered, its light dimming. The hum softened, replaced by a voice not in her head this time, but aloud, a chorus of tones that shivered through the canyon. "Keeper of the hollow," it said, the words folding into English, like a translation forced through static. "You've called. We have answered." Evelyn's mouth went dry. "I didn't call anything," she managed, her voice a rasp. "I'm an archaeologist, not a priest." The figure's head tilted again, its companions fanning out to flank her and Miguel. The key chose. The bridge stands. The pact renews. "Pact?" Miguel spat, his fear boiling into anger. "What pact? We didn't sign up for this." The figure ignored him, its hand extending toward Evelyn. A tendril of light snaked from its palm, coiling around her wrist like a vine. It didn't burn, but it pulled, a gentle tug that urged her toward the archway. Images flooded her mind, flashes of the Anasazi, their priests kneeling in the kivas, their people ascending in beams of light as the cliffs emptied. A trade, their world for another, their lives for survival beyond the stars. The Watchers had taken them, and now they were back, drawn by the disk, the meteor, her. "No!" She wrenched her arm free, the tendril snapping with a sound like breaking ice. "I'm not your bridge. I'm not going anywhere." The figure paused, its light dimming slightly. Refusal delays. It does not end. The spear falls. The gate remains. As if summoned, the meteor flared, its light blinding as it streaked closer, impossibly low. The canyon shook, rocks tumbling from the cliffs, and a new sound rose, a rhythmic thudding, faint but growing. Evelyn spun, her heart sinking as headlights pierced the darkness beyond the canyon's rim. Engines roared and figures in tactical gear spilled out, their movements precise, military. Not the society, something bigger. "Harper," a woman's voice barked, sharp and commanding. A tall figure strode forward, her silhouette framed by the headlights' short-cropped hair, a scar slicing her cheek. She carried no rifle, just a tablet glowing in her hand. Step away from the artifact. "Now, who the hell are you?" Evelyn snapped, her patience fraying. "Dr. Lena Voss, DARPA," the woman said, her tone clipped. "We've been tracking this site's emissions for weeks. You just lit up every sensor from here to Nevada. Whatever you've got running, shut it down." "DARPA?" Miguel's voice rose an octave. "The government knows about this?" Voss didn't flinch. "We've known since Roswell. These things," she jerked her chin at the Watchers, "aren't new. But that signal is, and it's ours now." The Watchers turned, their forms rippling as Voss's team fanned out, weapons trained. The disk flared again, its hum spiking, and the meteor's light bathed the canyon in fire. Evelyn felt the pull again, stronger now, as the archway pulsed, widening. Shadows writhed within it more. Watchers, or something worse. The ground cracked beneath her feet, and Miguel stumbled, clutching her arm. "Evelyn, we're out of time," he shouted. "Government, aliens, whatever, they're all after it." Voss stepped closer, her tablet flashing with data. "Last chance, Harper. Hand it over, or we take it." The Watchers' chorus returned. Colder now, the bridge chooses. The pact binds. The hollow waits. Evelyn's gaze darted between the disk, the archway, Voss's soldiers, and the approaching meteor. The spear was falling, the gate was open, and she was caught in the center scholar. Pawn. Bridge. Her hand hovered over the disk, its heat searing her skin. She could destroy it, run with Miguel, or face the unknown. The canyon held its breath, waiting for her move. The meteor's fiery spear split the sky, its roar drowning out the hum of the disk as it hovered, spinning faster, a vortex of light and shadow. Evelyn's hand lingered over it, the heat blistering her palm, her mind a storm of doubt and defiance. The Watchers loomed closer, their glassy forms reflecting the chaos her face, Miguel's. Voss's soldiers distorted in their surfaces like trapped souls. Voss's voice cut through the noise, sharp as a blade. "Harper," the first said now. Her team advanced, boots crunching, rifles glinting, their barrels trained on Evelyn and the disk. "No one's taking it," Evelyn shouted, her voice raw. She didn't know what she was doing, only that the disk was hers to protect, hers to understand. She grabbed it, ignoring the searing pain, and yanked it from the air. The hum spiked into a scream, and the Watchers recoiled, their tendrils of light snapping back like severed veins. The archway pulsed violently, its rippling surface spitting sparks, and the ground heaved, throwing Voss's soldiers off balance. Miguel lunged for her, his eyes wild. "Evelyn, drop it. You're making it worse." But she couldn't. The disk thrummed in her hands, alive, its markings burning into her vision stars. Spears, a jagged script that whispered truth she couldn't yet read. The Watchers' chorus swelled, a deafening harmony. The bridge binds. The pact lives. The meteor was close now, a blazing dagger aimed at the canyon, its light turning night to day. Evelyn stumbled back, clutching the disk to her chest, as Voss's team regained their footing. "Open fire," Voss barked, her tablet dropping as she drew a pistol. Bullets ripped through the air, pinging off the Watchers' forms in bursts of useless sparks. One soldier screamed as a tendril lashed out. Wrapping his arm and pulling, he vanished into the archway with a wet crack, his rifle clattering to the dirt. The others hesitated, fear cracking their discipline. But Voss pressed forward, her scarred face lit by the meteor's glow. "Harper, you're out of moves," she yelled, aiming at Evelyn's chest. "That thing's a weapon, and we're not letting it fall to them or you." "It's not a weapon," Evelyn shot back, dodging as a bullet whizzed past her ear. "It's a key, and you don't even know what it opens." She spun toward the kiva, the disk's heat scorching her shirt, and leapt, sliding down the cracked rim into its depths. Miguel cursed and followed, tumbling after her as the ground shook harder, the fissure widening. Above, chaos erupted. The Watchers moved, their forms blurring into streaks of light, slashing through Voss's team. Screams mingled with gunfire, bodies hitting the dirt, blood soaking the sand. Gideon's lifeless form lay forgotten, his pendant dull, as the archway flared brighter, a maw of light and shadow. The meteor's roar was deafening now, its tail a fiery whip lashing the sky. Evelyn hit the kiva floor, the disc slipping from her grasp and skidding across the silt. Miguel landed beside her, coughing, his hands scraped raw. "What the hell are we doing, Doc?" he gasped, staring at the disc as it pulsed, its light painting the walls with alien constellations. "Surviving," she said, scrambling to her feet. She grabbed the disc again, its heat somehow bearable now, as if it recognized her. The kiva walls shimmered, revealing more carvings, figures in horned masks, hands clutching spears, a sky raining fire. The prophecy wasn't just a warning. It was a map, a sequence. She traced the jagged line, the spear, its path ending at a circle, pierced by a spiral. The disc's central symbol. "It's not about the meteor," she whispered, realization dawning. "It's about this." She pressed her thumb to the spiral, and the disc clicked, a hidden seam splitting open. A shard of crystal slid out, glowing with a deep violet hue, its edges sharp enough to cut stone. The hum softened, the disc's spin slowing, but the air grew heavier, electric. Above, Voss's voice rang out, closer now. "Harper, you're dead if you don't come up." A rope dropped into the kiva, followed by the thud of boots. She was descending, pistol in hand. The Watchers' light dimmed, their forms retreating toward the archway as if waiting, watching. Evelyn clutched the crystal, its glow pulsing in time with her heartbeat. "Miguel, get behind me," she said, stepping forward as Voss landed, her scarred face twisted with fury. "Give it up," Voss snarled, leveling her gun. "You're not walking out of here with that." "You don't get it," Evelyn said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her legs. "This isn't yours to control. It's theirs, and they're not done." She held up the crystal, its light flaring, and the kiva shook, dust raining from the ceiling. The archway roared back to life, its surface splitting wider, revealing a void, not darkness, but a kaleidoscope of colors, stars, and shapes that defied geometry. Voss fired, the bullet grazing Evelyn's shoulder, but she didn't flinch. The crystal burned brighter, and the Watchers returned, their forms surging through the kiva's entrance. One seized Voss, its tendril coiling around her throat. She choked, her pistol clattering away as she was dragged upward, vanishing into the archway's maw. Her scream cut off abruptly, leaving only silence. Miguel grabbed Evelyn's arm, his face pale. "What did you do?" "I don't know," she admitted, staring at the crystal, its light now steady, warm. The disc lay dormant, its power spent, but the archway remained open, a gateway to whatever lay beyond. The meteor's light faded, its path veering. It wasn't crashing, not yet. A decoy? A signal? She couldn't tell. The Watchers turned to her, their chorus softer now, almost pleading. The bridge stands. The pact waits. Choose. Blood trickled down her arm, her shoulder throbbing, but Evelyn's mind raced. The Anasazi had ascended, escaped, or been taken. The Society had guarded the secret. DARPA wanted the power, and she was the bridge, the one who'd unlocked it all. The crystal hummed in her hand, a key within a key, and the archway beckoned, its colors shifting. hypnotic. Footsteps echoed above more soldiers, or something else. The canyon wasn't safe anymore. Miguel's eyes pleaded with her, but she saw the same fire in them that burned in her. Fear. Yes, but also hunger for the truth. "We go through," she said, her voice firm. "We find out what they left behind." "Are you insane?" Miguel hissed, but he didn't pull away. "Probably," she said, a grim smile tugging at her lips. She stepped toward the archway, the crystal raised, its light merging with the void. The watchers parted, their forms bowing slightly, and the air shivered with possibility. "But I'm not stopping now." She crossed the threshold, Miguel at her side, and the world dissolved into light. Behind them, the canyon fell silent, the disk dull, the archway sealed, until a new shadow crept from the cliffs. A figure in a hood, pendant gleaming. It knelt, whispering. The spear missed. The hollow endures. High above, the meteor curved, vanishing beyond the horizon. Its fire reignited. The game wasn't over. The light swallowed Evelyn and Miguel whole, a cascade of colors and sound that tore at their senses. For a moment, there was nothing, no ground, no sky, just a weightless void where time stretched thin and snapped. Evelyn clutched the crystal tighter, its violet glow the only anchor as her mind spun with fragments of the Anasazi's carvings, horned figures, falling stars, hands raised to a fractured sky. Then, with a jolt, the world reformed. They landed hard on a surface smooth as glass, sprawling across a vast mirrored plain that stretched to a horizon ablaze with twin suns, one red, one blue, locked in a slow, eternal dance. The air shimmered with a metallic tang, thick and humid, unlike the dry bite of the desert they'd left. Towering structures loomed in the distance, their shapes organic yet alien spirals of stone and light, twisting upward like petrified vines. Evelyn pushed herself up, her shoulder throbbing from Voss's bullet, her breath ragged. Miguel groaned beside her, blinking against the surreal light. "Where are we?" he rasped, his voice echoing faintly across the plain. Evelyn didn't answer right away, her eyes locked on the crystal in her hand. Its glow pulsed steadily, syncing with a low hum that vibrated through the ground, not the disk's wail, but something deeper, alive. She stood, scanning the landscape. The archway they'd crossed through was gone, replaced by a faint shimmer in the air, a scar where their world had been. The watchers stood nearby, 3 of them, their glassy forms reflecting the alien suns. They didn't advance, didn't speak, just watched with those void eyes, patient and unreadable. "This is it," she said finally, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "Where the Anasazi went, their ascension." Miguel staggered to his feet, his skepticism warring with awe. "This isn't Earth. This is another planet or a dimension," Evelyn said, her mind racing. "The journal called it the broken sky. The watchers took them here through the gate. The disk, the crystal, the meteor, it was all a signal, a bridge between worlds." Before Miguel could respond, a shadow rippled across the plain, a swarm of figures emerging from the spiraled structures. They moved with purpose, their forms humanoid but taller, leaner, their skin a mottled gray-green that shimmered like wet stone. Horned masks adorned their heads, carved with the same symbols Evelyn had traced on the canyon walls. Spirals, spears, suns. Her breath caught. These weren't the watchers. These were the Anasazi, or what they'd become. The group stopped a dozen yards away, their masks glinting under the twin suns. One stepped forward, its mask simpler, unadorned but for a single spiral across the brow. It raised a hand, and the crystal in Evelyn's grip flared, pulling her forward a step. She resisted, planting her boots against the glass. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice carrying across the stillness. The figure tilted its head, a gesture eerily like the watchers, and removed its mask. Beneath was a face both familiar and alien, high cheekbones, eyes too large, too dark, but human enough to stir a pang in Evelyn's chest. It spoke, its voice a layered hum that resolved into words she understood. We are the Ascended, the Hollow's children. You hold the heart of the gate. Evelyn glanced at the crystal, the heart. You're the Anasazi, she said, piecing it together. You didn't vanish. You left. The figure nodded, a slow, deliberate motion. When the earth turned to dust, we sought the Watchers. They offered refuge, a new sky, a new flesh. We became more. You have reopened the pact. Miguel stepped closer to Evelyn, his voice low. They're not human anymore, Doc. What the hell did we walk into? They're still us, she murmured, her eyes tracing the figure's features. Evolved, changed, but us. She raised the crystal, its light steady. Why call me the bridge? What do you want? The Ascended gestured to the plane, the structures, the suns. The Watchers built this world for us, but the gate closed. The heart was lost until you found it. Now the pact renews. Earth calls. We answer. Evelyn's stomach dropped. You're going back? Not to conquer, the Ascended said, sensing her fear. To mend. The spear, the fire from your sky threatens both worlds. The Watchers foresaw it. You woke the gate in time. Her mind flashed to the meteor, its unnatural path, its fire reignited. A threat, not just a signal. A collision? She asked. It's going to hit Earth? The Ascended nodded. Unless the heart binds the skies, the bridge must choose. The Watchers shifted, their chorus rising again. The pact binds. The Hollow waits. The crystal grew warm, its light threading upward, weaving into the shimmer where the gate had been. Evelyn felt it a pull, not just on her body but her will, her purpose. The Anasazi had traded their world for survival. Now she held the key to save hers or doom it. Miguel grabbed her arm, his face pale. Evelyn, if that thing hits, everyone Denver, Mesa Verde, everything gone. But this is insane. We don't even know what binding the skies means. It means balance, the Ascended said, its dark eyes locking on hers. The heart can shift the spear's path, seal the gate. Both worlds endure, but the bridge remains. Remains? Evelyn's voice sharpened. You mean I stay here? The Ascended silence was answer enough. The Watchers advanced, their tendrils coiling toward the crystal, urging her forward. She pulled back, her shoulder aching, her mind racing. She could save Earth, her home, her people, but at the cost of herself. Or she could run, find a way back, leave the meteor to its fate. The Society had guarded this secret. DARPA had chased its power, and she'd unlocked it all. Now the choice was hers. The twin suns glared down, the Ascended waiting, their masks a silent jury. Miguel's grip tightened. Don't do it, Doc. We'll figure something else out. But there was no time. The shimmer in the air pulsed, the meteor's echo vibrating through the plane, a countdown ticking toward catastrophe. Evelyn closed her eyes, seeing the petroglyphs, the kivas, the Anasazi's desperate leap into the unknown. They'd chosen survival. She could choose redemption. I'm sorry, she whispered to Miguel, slipping her arm free. She stepped toward the Watchers, raising the crystal. Its light exploded, a violet beam piercing the shimmer, threading into the void. The ground quaked, the plane cracking, and the Ascended hummed a song of gratitude, of farewell. The Watcher's tendrils wrapped around her, gentle but firm, pulling her toward the gate's scar. No. Miguel lunged, but a wall of light flared, shoving him back. He fell to his knees, shouting her name as the beam intensified, the crystal dissolving into sparks. Evelyn felt the pact seal her will, her choice, binding the skies. The meteor's path shifted, its fire veering in her mind's eye, arcing away from Earth toward the twin suns' embrace. A sacrifice accepted. The gate flared one last time, then collapsed, the shimmer winking out. Evelyn vanished, the Watchers with her, leaving Miguel alone on the mirrored plane. The Ascended approached, their leader kneeling beside him. She saved you, it said, placing a hand on his shoulder. The hollow is closed. The heart is home. Miguel's chest heaved, tears cutting tracks through the dust on his face. "Take me back," he pleaded. "I can't stay here." The Ascended nodded, its mask gleaming. "The pact is complete. You are free." A new shimmer opened. Smaller, simpler, a window to the canyon. Miguel stumbled through, landing hard on the familiar red dirt. The archway stood silent, its symbols dull, the disk a lifeless husk. Above, the night sky was clear, the meteor gone, its threat erased. He sank to the ground, clutching the earth, the weight of Evelyn's choice crushing him. Days later, back in Denver, Miguel sat in Evelyn's office. Her notes spread across the desk. The journal was ash, the disk confiscated by DARPA's remnants Voss's team lost, their operation buried in red tape. He wrote it all down, every detail, publishing it as fiction to protect the truth. The red hollow faded into rumor, the society's shadow retreating. But he kept one secret, a single petroglyph sketch Evelyn had left behind, a spiral sun, a horned figure, a woman with a crystal in her hand. Far beyond, under twin suns, Evelyn walked the spiraled cities, her shoulder healed, her mind sharp. The Ascended taught her their tongue, their history a bridge not just of worlds, but of understanding. She'd saved Earth, sealed the gate, and found a new purpose. The Watchers watched, silent guardians, and she felt no regret. The hollow was hers now, a home beyond the stars. Back on Earth, Miguel looked up at the night sky, a faint violet streak catching his eye, a trick of the light, or a whisper from the broken sky. He smiled, bittersweet, and whispered, "You did it, Doc." The world turned on, safe, whole, its savior a legend etched in stone and starlight. Story 2. The Caldera's Whisper. The sun dipped low over the Aegean Sea, casting a molten glow across the jagged cliffs of Santorini. The island's crescent shape cradled a restless caldera, its waters shimmering like a dark mirror beneath the volcanic rim. Dr. Elena Voss stood at the edge of Akrotiri's excavated ruins, her boots crunching against ash-dusted stones. A marine archaeologist with a mop of chestnut hair and eyes sharp as obsidian, Elena had spent years chasing whispers of the past, whispers that now screamed from the soil beneath her feet. The Minoan settlement here, buried by the catastrophic eruption of Thera over 600 years ago, was more than a relic. It was a key, and today she'd found something that could unlock it. In her gloved hands, she held a slab of pumice, its surface etched with spiraling glyphs, unlike any Minoan script she'd studied. The carvings pulsed faintly, as if kissed by sunlight trapped within the stone. Elena's pulse quickened. She'd uncovered it in a sealed chamber beneath a collapsed frescoed wall, alongside fragments of a bronze dagger and a shard of obsidian polished to a mirror's sheen. The glyphs weren't just decoration, they were a code, a riddle from a civilization that shouldn't have known such complexity. Her mentor, Professor Nikos Stavros, had warned her about chasing myths. "Atlantis is a fairy tale, Elena," he'd grumbled over Uzo in Athens. "Thera's real enough without it." But Nikos hadn't seen this. She traced a finger over the glyphs, her mind racing. The eruption of Thera, in 1628 BCE, had reshaped the ancient world, its ash cloud choking the Minoan Empire and birthing legends of a sunken realm. Plato's Atlantis, described as a naval power swallowed by the sea, fit the timeline too neatly to dismiss. Elena had always suspected Santorini's caldera was its grave. Now, this stone hinted at more, a warning, a prophecy, something the Minoans had desperately tried to preserve as their world burned. "Dr. Voss." The shout snapped her from her reverie. Giannis, her wiry Greek assistant, scrambled up the dig site's slope, his face flushed beneath a mop of black curls. "You need to see this now." He thrust a battered journal at her, its leather cover cracked with age. "Found it in the same chamber, wedged in a crevice. It's not Minoan, it's modern. Early 20th century, I think." Elena frowned. flipping it open. The pages crackled, revealing tight, spidery handwriting in Greek. A name caught her eye. Heinrich Schliemann, the German archaeologist famed for unearthing Troy in 1871. The date was 1885, a year before his death. Her breath hitched. Schliemann had visited Santorini, obsessed with proving Atlantis lay beneath its waves. The journal's first line sent a chill down her spine. The caldera speaks. The Minoans knew. Their warning is ours. She skimmed the text, her heart pounding. Schliemann described a tablet of fire, a pumice slab etched with a prophecy he'd found near Akrotiri. He'd deciphered part of it. When the sea bleeds red and the earth trembles anew, the lost shall rise to claim the unworthy. He believed it foretold a second cataclysm tied to Atlantis' return. But he'd hidden the tablet after a shadowy group calling themselves the Order of the Saffron Veil threatened his life. The journal ended abruptly, mid-sentence. They are watching. Elena clutched the pumice slab tighter. It matched Schliemann's description perfectly. The Order of the Saffron Veil saffron, the sacred spice of Minoan priestesses, their robes dyed gold by its threads. A secret society, surviving millennia. It sounded insane, but the journal's weight in her hands felt all too real. We're not alone out here, Giannis muttered, glancing at the cliffs. Shadows stretched long and jagged as the sun sank. I heard footsteps near the boat this morning. Someone's been sniffing around. Before Elena could respond, a low rumble shook the ground. Dust sifted from the ruins, and the caldera's waters rippled unnaturally. She steadied herself, adrenaline surging. Santorini was no stranger to tremors, but this felt different, older, hungrier. The slab in her hands grew warm, its glyphs glowing faintly, as if answering the earth's call. That night, in their cramped dig site tent, Elena pored over the slab and journal by lantern light. Giannis brewed coffee, his nervous chatter filling the silence. You think Schliemann was nuts, huh? Chasing fairy tales? My yaya used to say the caldera's alive, you know. Said Poseidon cursed it when Atlantis sank. Poseidon might have had help, Elena murmured, tracing the glyphs. She'd cross-referenced them with Minoan Linear A, undeciphered to this day, and found overlaps with symbols from Crete's Phaistos disk, a clay artifact riddled with mystery. One glyph, a trident piercing a wave, repeated obsessively. Another, a circle split by a jagged line, mirrored the caldera's shape. If this was a prophecy, it wasn't just poetry, it was a map. A sharp crack split the air outside. Giannis dropped the coffee pot, splashing dark liquid across the dirt floor. Elena grabbed a flashlight and darted out, her boots skidding on loose gravel. The beam caught a figure cloaked in saffron yellow, vanishing behind a crumbled wall. Her stomach twisted. The order was real, and they'd found her. The next morning, Elena dove into the caldera's depths. She'd chartered a rickety boat from a grizzled fisherman named Costas, who'd eyed the slab with superstitious dread. That's trouble, Kyria, he'd rasped, spitting into the sea. The old ones don't like being disturbed. But Elena had no choice. Schliemann's journal hinted at a submerged ruin near Nea Kameni, the volcanic islet at the caldera's heart. If the slab's prophecy tied to Atlantis, evidence might lie below. The water was frigid, a murky blue-green that swallowed light. Her scuba gear hummed as she descended, the slab tucked in a waterproof pouch. At 60 feet, the seafloor emerged a chaos of volcanic rock and silt. Then she saw it, a stone arch, impossibly intact, its surface carved with the same spiraling glyphs. Her regulator bubbled furiously as she swam closer. The arch framed a sunken platform, littered with shattered pottery and a bronze statue of a bull, its horns glinting in her flashlight's beam. Minoan unmistakably. Her chest tightened. This wasn't just a ruin, it was a shrine. Something glinted in the silt. She brushed it aside, revealing a second pumice slab, larger than the first, its glyphs glowing faintly even underwater. As she touched it, a vision slammed into her, a city of white stone and golden domes, its harbors bustling with triremes. then fire rivers of lava spilling from the caldera, waves towering over the cliffs, swallowing the city whole. Screams echoed in her skull, and a voice, deep and resonant, intoned, "The unworthy will drown again." She surfaced, gasping, the slab clutched to her chest. Costas hauled her aboard, his weathered face pale. "You saw it, didn't you?" he whispered. "The ghost city." Before she could answer, a sleek black boat sliced through the waves, its crew masked in saffron hoods. A harpoon gun gleamed on its deck. Elena ducked as a steel bolt thumped into the hull, inches from her head. Costas gunned the engine, cursing in Greek, but the black boat gained fast. Giannis, back on shore, waved frantically from the cliffs, a flare gun in hand. He fired, the red streak arcing over the caldera a desperate signal. The chase veered toward Nia Kameni's sulphurous shores. Elena clutched both slabs, their heat searing through her wetsuit. The Order wanted them, wanted the prophecy, but why? Schliemann's words gnawed at her. The lost shall rise. Was Atlantis more than a memory? Was the caldera waking? They ditched the boat in a cove, scrambling up the islet's steaming rocks. The black boat circled, its crew shouting in a tongue Elena didn't recognize, archaic, guttural, like a priestly chant. She and Costas hid in a lava tube, its walls slick with condensation. There, in the flickering light of her flashlight, she studied the second slab. Its glyphs matched the first, but added a chilling line: blood calls blood. The sea will judge. A shadow loomed at the tube's mouth, not saffron-clad, but tall and gaunt, cloaked in black. The figure's voice rasped like dry leaves. "You meddle in things you cannot fathom, Dr. Voss. Give me the tablets, and you might live." Elena gripped the slabs tighter. "Who are you? The Order?" A laugh, cold and hollow. "The Order serves. I command. I am Theron, keeper of the Veil. Atlantis is no myth. It waits, and you've woken it." The ground shuddered again, stronger this time. Steam hissed from cracks in the rock, and the caldera's waters churned red, like blood seeping from a wound. Elena's mind raced. The prophecy wasn't a warning, it was a summons, and she'd answered it. The lava tube trembled around Elena, its walls groaning as if the earth itself were exhaling. Theron's silhouette blocked the entrance, his black cloak billowing in the sulphurous wind gusting off Nia Kameni's barren slopes. His eyes pale, almost luminescent, fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. The slabs in her arms pulsed hotter, their glyphs flaring like embers, and the caldera's bloody waters churned louder beyond the cove. Costas crouched beside her, his fisherman's knife trembling in his gnarled hand. "Kyria, we're trapped," he hissed, his voice barely audible over the island's rumble. Elena's mind spun. Theron wasn't just a man, he carried an aura, older than the ruins she'd spent her life unearthing. The Keeper of the Veil, he'd called himself. A title tied to the Order of the Saffron Veil, but his presence felt heavier, more primal, as if he'd stepped out of the Minoan frescoes she'd studied, those stern priest kings with their bull-horned crowns and unblinking gazes. She tightened her grip on the slabs. "You want these?" she shouted, her voice steady despite the fear clawing her gut. "Tell me what they mean. What's waking?" Theron's lips curled into a thin, mirthless smile. "You've read Schliemann's scribbles, haven't you? The unworthy drown, the lost rise. But you're blind to the truth beneath the words. Atlantis isn't gone, it's sleeping, and the caldera is its cradle." He stepped closer, his boots silent on the volcanic rock. "Those tablets are keys, forged in fire and blood. Give them to me, and I'll spare you the judgment they summon." "Judgment." Elena shot back, stalling as she scanned the tube for an escape. A narrow fissure snaked upward behind her, barely wide enough to squeeze through. "You sound like a cultist, not a scholar. If Atlantis is real, prove it. What's the prophecy for?" Theron's eyes narrowed. The Minoans saw the end coming fire from the sky, waves taller than mountains. They carved their plea into those stones, an offering to the sea god who spared them once. Poseidon, you call him, but he's older than your myths, and his patience is thin. The tablets call him back to weigh the world anew. Blood calls blood, Dr. Voss. Yours will do. A chill slithered down her spine. The trident glyph flashed in her mind, the one repeated on both slabs. Poseidon, the earth shaker, the tamer of the deep. Minoan art revered bulls, not tridents, but Crete's Knossos palace held hints of a sea cult, its labyrinthine halls echoing with maritime power. If Theron was right, the eruption of Thera hadn't just buried a civilization, it had sealed a pact, and she'd cracked it open. The ground lurched, throwing Elena against the wall. Kostas yelped as his knife clattered away. Steam burst from the fissure, scalding her cheek, but she saw her chance. "Go!" she barked, shoving Kostas toward the gap. He hesitated, then scrambled up, his wiry frame disappearing into the dark. Elena lunged after him. The slabs clutched to her chest, their heat searing through her jacket. Theron's hand shot out, fingers brushing her ankle, but she kicked free, clawing her way upward. The fissure spat them onto Nia Kameni's summit, a blackened plateau reeking of brimstone. The caldera stretched below, its waters now a deep crimson, swirling with unnatural eddies. Kostas panted beside her, his face streaked with ash. "The boat," he started, but a crack split the air. The saffron-cloaked figures from the black boat swarmed the cove, their harpoon guns glinting. Giannis' flare had drawn attention, but not yet. Elena's eyes darted to the horizon. Santorini's cliffs loomed miles away, Akrotiri's whitewashed houses glinting faintly. Too far. Then she saw it, a plume of smoke rising from the caldera's edge near the dig site. Giannis. He was still out there, fighting to reach her. She fumbled for her radio, static crackling as she pressed the button. "Giannis, it's me. We're on the islet pinned down. Can you get Kostas's boat?" The reply came faint but fierce. "Already on it, boss. Hold tight, I've got company, though. Those saffron freaks are everywhere." A gunshot popped through the static, and the line went dead. Theron emerged from the lava tube, his cloak untouched by the grime that coated Elena. He moved with a predator's grace, unhurried, as if the island's convulsions were his symphony. "You can't outrun fate, Dr. Voss," he called, his voice cutting through the wind. "The sea is rising. Listen." She did. Beneath the earth's groans, a low, rhythmic pulse thrummed a heartbeat, vast and ancient, emanating from the caldera. The slabs vibrated in sync, their glyphs blazing now, casting eerie light across her hands. Another vision hit her, the white stone city again, its golden domes trembling as the sea boiled. A figure stood atop a tower, trident raised, his face obscured by a bull's mask. The voice roared again. "The unworthy drown. The worthy rule." Elena staggered, the images fading. Theron was closer now, barely 20 feet away. The saffron figures flanked him, their hoods shadowing blank, impassive faces. She backed toward the plateau's edge, the drop to the crimson waves dizzying. "You're wrong," she said, her voice raw. "This isn't fate, it's a warning. The Minoans didn't beg Poseidon to destroy us. They begged him to stop." Theron tilted his head, amused. A scholar's optimism. "You see ruins and dream of lessons. I see power and claim it. The tablets are mine, and the world will bend when Atlantis wakes." A roar split the sky. Elena whirled as Kostas's boat, battered but afloat, surged into view. Giannis at the helm. He fired another flare, this one streaking toward Theron's group. It burst midair, showering sparks that drove the saffron figures back. "Jump!" Giannis yelled, swinging the boat beneath the cliff. Elena didn't hesitate. She leapt, Kostas tumbling after her, and hit the deck hard. The slabs skidded across the wood, still glowing. Giannis gunned the engine, the boat lurching through the churning waves. Theron's silhouette shrank on the plateau, his voice a fading echo. You'll drown with the rest, Dr. Voss. The caldera erupted behind them, not lava, but water, a geyser of red froth blasting skyward. The boat rocked violently, but Giannis held course, steering toward Akrotiri. Elena clutched the slabs, her mind racing. The prophecy wasn't finished. Blood calls blood. Theron wanted her life to fuel it, but why? And what did the worthy rule mean? Back at the dig site, the tent was a shambles, gear smashed, notes shredded. Giannis slumped against a crate, blood trickling from a gash on his arm. "They hit us hard," he muttered. "Took half our stuff." I got the boat out just in time. Costas rummaged through the wreckage, pulling out a battered map of Santorini. "We need help, Kyria. The Coast Guard, someone. This is bigger than us." Elena shook her head, spreading the slabs on a table. "No authorities, not yet. They'll confiscate these, and we'll lose the truth. We need to decode them fully." Schliemann started it. "I'll finish it." Hours bled into dawn as she worked, cross-referencing the glyphs. With every text she had Minoan, Greek, even Hittite records from 1600 BCE. The trident symbol linked to Poseidon, yes, but also to a Minoan deity, Velchanos, a storm god tied to bulls and earthquakes. The split circle was the caldera, a seal on Atlantis's tomb, and the final line, "The sea will judge," hinted at a ritual, a sacrifice to tip the scales. A shadow fell across the tent flap. Elena tensed, expecting Theron, but it was an old woman, her face creased like parchment, saffron threads woven into her silver hair. "You've stirred the deep, child," she rasped, her accent thick with the island's dialect. "I'm Clytemnestra, last of the old blood. The veil hunts you, but I can guide you if you're brave enough." Elena stared, the slabs humming faintly. The caldera rumbled again, a reminder of the stakes. "Tell me everything," she said. Clytemnestra's eyes gleamed like sea glass in the tent's dim light, sharp and ancient beneath her saffron-threaded hair. She shuffled forward, her gnarled hands clutching a staff topped with a bronze bull's head, its horns worn smooth by time. The air thickened with the scent of thyme and salt, as if she'd brought the island's soul with her. Elena stood frozen, the slab's glow casting flickering shadows across the canvas walls. Giannis and Kostas exchanged wary glances, the younger man's hand hovering near his flare gun, the fisherman's knuckles whitening around a salvaged wrench. "Speak quickly," Elena said, her voice taut. "The caldera's alive, and Theron's coming. If you know something, prove it." Clytemnestra chuckled, a dry rattling sound. "Proof? You hold it, girl. Those tablets sing to the deep, and I hear their echo. My blood's tied to this rock older than your books, older than Schliemann's greed." The Minoans weren't just sailors and painters. They were keepers of a pact, forged when the world broke. Elena's pulse quickened. A pact with who? Poseidon? Velchanos? The old woman's smile faded. Names change. The power doesn't. Call him what you will, the Shaker, the bull of the waves. He spared Thera's heart when Atlantis sank, but not out of mercy. It was a cage. The city's bones lie beneath us, locked by blood and stone. The tablets are its voice, and you've let it scream. The ground shivered, punctuating her words. Dust sifted from the tent's seams, and the caldera's distant roar grew sharper, like a beast stirring from slumber. Elena glanced at the slabs, their glyphs pulsing in rhythm with the tremors. Theron said they're keys. He wants my blood to use them. Why? Clytemnestra tapped her staff, the bull's head glinting, because the pact demands it. When Thera erupted, the Minoans offered their best priests, kings, daughters to seal the rift. Blood calm to see. But the prophecy says it'll open again, and only blood can choose, drown the unworthy or raise the lost. Theron's no fool. He thinks he's worthy, thinks Atlantis will bow to him. Giannis snorted, wiping sweat from his brow. He's crazy. This isn't some fairy tale. We've got boats, guns. We can stop him. Crazy's not the problem, Kostas muttered. his eyes on the old woman. "She's talking gods, Giannis. My yaya swore the caldera took her brother in 52. Said the water turned red before he vanished." Elena's mind raced, piecing it together. The Minoan frescoes at Akrotiri bull leapers, saffron gatherers, ships hid a darker thread. The Phaistos disc spirals, the trident glyphs, Schliemann's journal all pointed to a ritual tied to the sea. Plato's Atlantis described a hubristic empire punished by divine wrath. But what if it wasn't destroyed? What if it was submerged, waiting? She met Clytemnestra's gaze. "You said you'd guide me. How do I stop this?" The old woman hobbled to the table, tracing a finger over the slabs. "You don't stop it. You steer it. The tablets need blood, yes, but not his and not yours, if you're clever. There's a place, deep in the caldera, where the pact was made. A sunken altar. Find it, speak the words, and you choose the judgment." "Words?" Elena pressed. "What words?" Clytemnestra's lips parted, but a sharp crack cut her off a gunshot, close and deliberate. The tent flap ripped open, and saffron-cloaked figures stormed in, their faces masked by hoods, hands gripping curved blades that gleamed like Minoan bronze. Giannis fired his flare gun, the projectile bursting into a saffron hood and igniting it. The figure screamed, flailing, but more poured through. Costa swung his wrench, cracking a skull, while Elena snatched the slabs and bolted for the back exit. Clytemnestra moved faster than her age suggested, her staff slamming into a masked knee with a sickening crunch. "Go!" she barked, shoving Elena toward the cliffs. "The boat now!" The night erupted into chaos. Elena sprinted across the dig site, the slabs heavy in her arms, their heat scorching her skin. Giannis and Kostas followed, dodging blades and bullets as the saffron figures swarmed like locusts. The caldera loomed ahead, its crimson waters churning higher, waves lapping at the shore where Kostas's boat rocked. They piled in, Giannis yanking the starter while Elena scanned the cliffs. Clytemnestra stood silhouetted against the moon, her staff raised as Theron emerged behind her, his black cloak a void against the silver light. The boat surged forward, cutting through the bloody tide. Elena's stomach twisted as Clytemnestra's form vanished, swallowed by Theron's shadow. "We can't leave her," she shouted. "She chose it," Kostas growled, steering hard. "She's buying us time. Where's this altar?" Elena forced her focus to the slabs. The glyphs blurred in her vision, but the split circle, the caldera, stood out. She grabbed Kostas's map, her finger landing on a spot near Nia Kameni's western edge, where sonar had once pinged an anomaly. There, submerged, maybe 80 feet down. If it's real, it's our shot. The caldera's pulse grew louder, a drum beat shaking the boat. The water thickened, streaked with ash and something darker, oil or blood or both. Giannis rigged a makeshift dive kit from their gear, his hands trembling. "You're crazy, boss, but I'm in." Elena suited up, the slabs strapped to her chest. The dive was a gamble. Theron's boat would find them soon, and the caldera's fury was rising. She hit the water, the cold biting through her wetsuit, and descended into the murk. At 70 feet, her flashlight caught it, a platform of black stone, its edges carved with bulls and tridents, half buried in silt. An altar, ancient and unbroken, its center hollowed into a basin stained rust red. She swam closer, the slabs blazing now, their light cutting through the gloom. A third vision struck, the masked figure again, trident aloft, standing on this very altar as lava rained and waves roared. The voice thundered, "Speak and be judged." Elena surfaced in the basin, her regulator bubbling as she traced the glyphs aloud, her voice muffled by water. "Velchanos, hear me. Blood calls blood. Let the sea choose." The altar trembled. The caldera's heartbeat stopped, then exploded, a shockwave ripping through the deep. Above, the boat rocked wildly, Giannis and Costas shouting her name. Below, the silt shifted, revealing a crack in the seafloor, glowing with a faint, golden light. Something moved within it, vast, alive, rising. Elena kicked upward, breaking the surface as the caldera erupted again. Not water this time, but stone, a spire of white marble piercing the waves, its surface etched with Minoan spirals. Atlantis wasn't a myth. It was here, waking, and Theron's black boat was closing in, his voice cutting through the chaos. "You've lost, Dr. Voss." The worthy rule. The spire of white marble loomed above the crimson waves, its spiraling glyphs glistening wetly in the dawn's frail light. Salt spray stung Elena's face as she clung to the boat's railing, her wetsuit dripping, the slab still strapped to her chest like a second heartbeat. The caldera roared a primal, guttural bellow that shook the sea and sky alike, and the water churned violently, frothing red and black, as if the earth bled out its secrets. Giannis wrestled the helm, his face pale, while Costas muttered prayers to saints Elena didn't recognize, his eyes fixed on the rising stone. Theron's black boat sliced through the chaos, its hull cutting a merciless line toward them. The saffron-cloaked figures lined its deck, their blades flashing like teeth, but it was Theron who held her gaze, tall and gaunt, his cloak whipping in the wind, his pale eyes burning with triumph. "The worthy rule," he shouted again, his voice amplified by the caldera's echo, as if the island itself spoke through him. "You've opened the door, Dr. Voss, but I'll walk through it." Elena's hands tightened on the slabs, their heat pulsing through her numb fingers. The golden light from the seafloor crack still glowed beneath the waves, faint but growing, a beacon or a warning she couldn't tell. The altar's words echoed in her skull, "Speak and be judged." She'd spoken, and the caldera had answered, but the judgment wasn't clear. Atlantis was rising, piece by jagged piece, and Theron meant to claim it. She wouldn't let him. "Giannis, get us closer to that spire," she yelled, her voice raw over the wind. "There's more down there, I can feel it." "You're insane," he shot back, but he yanked the wheel, the boat lurching toward the marble tower. Costas grabbed a harpoon from the deck, his weathered hands steady despite the fear in his eyes. "If they board us, Kyria, they'll bleed for it." The spire grew as they approached, its base widening into a platform of polished stone that breached the surface, waves crashing against its edges. Minoan carvings spiraled up its length, bowls, tridents, waves mirroring the slab's glyphs. Elena's breath caught. This wasn't just a ruin. It was alive, humming with the same rhythm as the tablets, a fragment of the lost city breaking free from its watery tomb. Theron's boat veered alongside, a harpoon thunking into their hull with a splintering crack. Saffron figures leapt across the gap, landing with eerie grace, their blades slashing. Kostas roared, driving his harpoon into one's chest, while Giannis swung an oar, cracking another's skull. Elena ducked a swinging dagger, her flashlight clattering to the deck as she scrambled toward the spire's edge. She had no weapon but the slabs and the truth they held. A shadow loomed over her. Theron, his presence colder than the sea, seized her arm with bony fingers. "The tablets now," he hissed, his breath reeking of ash and decay. "You've played your part. Atlantis is mine." She twisted free, slamming a slab against his wrist. He recoiled, snarling, but his eyes gleamed with something beyond rage certainty. "Blood calls blood," he said, almost a chant. "Yours or mine, it doesn't matter. The sea will drink." The caldera shuddered again, and the spire tilted, its platform slanting toward the waves. A second spire erupted nearby, then a third, white stone piercing the red water like bones rising from a grave. Golden light flared brighter beneath, illuminating shapes in the depths, domes, arches, a city's skeleton, clawing free. Elena's vision blurred, the slab's heat searing her skin, and another flash hit her. The bull-masked figure, trident raised, standing atop a golden dome, as the sea parted. The voice boomed, the worthy rule through sacrifice. She stumbled to the spire's edge, Theron lunging after her. The boat rocked wildly. Giannis and Costas locked in a desperate fight with the saffron horde. Her foot slipped on wet stone, and she fell, hitting the platform hard. The slabs skidded free, their glow blinding now, and Theron towered over her, his blade drawn a curved Minoan sickle, its edge stained with centuries of rust and blood. "You woke it," he said, raising the weapon. "But I'll finish it." A crack split the air, not the earth this time, but a gunshot. Theron staggered, blood blooming on his shoulder, the sickle clattering away. Giannis stood on the boat, a salvaged pistol shaking in his hands. "Get up, boss," he shouted, firing again as saffron figures swarmed him. Elena lunged for the slabs, clutching them as she rolled to her feet. The platform trembled, a fissure opening at its center, golden light spilling out. Theron recovered, his wound ignored, and tackled her, his weight pinning her to the stone. "The sea judges," he roared, wrenching one slab from her grasp. He smeared his bloodied hand across its surface, the glyphs flaring red. The caldera answered. A wave towered overhead, crimson and roaring, crashing down with the force of a god's fist. It swept Theron off her, his scream swallowed by the flood, but the slab stayed locked in his grip as he vanished into the depths. The second slab pulsed in Elena's hands, its light steadying, and the wave receded, leaving her gasping on the platform. The spires stilled, the golden light dimmed, the city's rise halting halfway domes half submerged, arches teetering above the waves. Costas's boat bobbed nearby, Giannis hauling the fishermen aboard, both bloodied but alive. The saffron figures were gone, dragged into the sea with their master. Silence fell, broken only by the caldera's soft rhythmic pulse. Elena crawled to the fissure, peering into its glow. The second slab hummed, its glyphs shifting, forming a new pattern, a circle unbroken. A wave stilled. A final vision flickered, the bull-masked figure lowering his trident, nodding once, then fading into shadow. The voice whispered, softer now, the unworthy drown, the worthy wait. She sat back, exhaustion crashing over her. Atlantis hadn't fully risen. Theron's blood had fueled the summons, but not the completion. Hers hadn't been offered, and maybe that was the point. The Minoans hadn't begged for destruction or dominion. They'd begged for balance, a chance to prove humanity's worth. Giannis stumbled onto the platform, his arms slung around Costas. "What the hell happened, boss? Where's Theron?" "Gone," she said, her voice hoarse. "The sea took him. It's not over, though. There's more down there, more to understand." Costas spat into the water, now calming to a deep blue. "Let it sleep, Kyria. We've lost enough." But Elena's eyes lingered on the slab, its light fading to a gentle glow. Clytemnestra's words echoed, "Steer it." She'd stopped Theron, but the pact wasn't broken. Atlantis waited, and the caldera whispered still. Days later, back at Akrotiri, Elena sat among the ruins, the slab beside her. The dig site was quiet, Giannis nursing his wounds, Costas bartering for a new boat. She traced the glyphs, her mind on the altar, the spires, the city beneath. Schliemann had chased glory, Theron power. She wanted truth. And somewhere, the Order of the Saffron Veil lingered, their purpose unclear. A shadow fell across the stone. She looked up, expecting Giannis, but saw saffron threads glinting in silver hair. Clytemnestra, alive, her staff tapping the ground. "You chose well, child," she said, her voice a rasp. "The sea judged, and you stood, but the deep remembers. Next time, it'll call louder." Elena rose, the slab in hand. "Then I'll be ready." The caldera gleamed in the distance, silent for now, its secrets coiled tight. Atlantis slept again, but not forever. The sun hung low over Santorini, painting the cliffs gold as Elena stood among Akrotiri's ruins, the lone pumice slab cool against her palm. Its glyphs had dimmed since the caldera's last tremor, their once blazing light now a faint shimmer, like embers fading in a hearth. Days had passed since Theron's fall, since the sea swallowed him and his saffron-clad zealots, since the spires of Atlantis breached the waves only to halt, half-risen, their golden domes glinting beneath the surface. The island had settled into an uneasy quiet, but Elena felt no peace. Clytemnestra's parting words gnawed at her. The deep remembers. Next time, it'll call louder. Giannis limped toward her, his arm bandaged, a grin tugging at his bruised face. Coast Guard's sniffing around Nia Kameni, he said, tossing her a canteen. They're calling it seismic activity. No one's buying it, but they're not asking questions either. Kostas is haggling for a new boat, says. The old one's cursed. Elena took a sip, the water sharp against her parched throat. Good. We need time. The slab's not done talking. She turned it over, tracing the unbroken circle glyph, a symbol of closure or containment. The vision from the altar lingered, the bull-masked figure lowering his trident, whispering, "The worthy wait." Theron had sought to rule Atlantis, offering his blood in hubris. She'd stopped him, but the pact remained, its judgment deferred. The caldera's pulse, faint now, still thrummed in her bones. Footsteps crunched behind them. Kostas approached, his weathered face etched with exhaustion, a rolled map under his arm. "Found this in the wreckage," he said, spreading it on a broken fresco table. It was Schlieman's ink-stained, edges frayed, marked with a web of lines converging on the caldera's heart. A scrawled note in Greek circled a spot near the sunken altar. "The keystone lies where the bull stands." Elena's pulse quickened. The bronze bull statue, I saw it near the arch underwater. It wasn't just decoration. Schliemann knew. She met their eyes. Theron's gone, but the order might not be. If there's a keystone, it could finish this seal Atlantis for good, or wake it fully. "We have to find it," Giannis groaned. "Boss, we barely survived the last dive. You're still limping, I'm half dead, and Kostas looks like he's ready to retire to a taverna. Can't we call it done?" "No," she said firmly. "The caldera's alive, Giannis. I felt that the city's waiting, testing us. If we walk away, someone else will answer its call. I'd rather it be us." Kostas nodded, reluctant but resolute. "My yaya said, the old ones don't rest easy. If there's a way to quiet them, I'm in. But we do it smart, no more running blind." They prepped that night, scavenging gear from the dig site, a patched scuba kit, a reinforced boat from Kostas's fisherman contacts, and a handheld sonar Giannis jury-rigged from spare parts. Elena pored over the slab and Schliemann's map, cross-referencing glyphs with Minoan artifacts. The bull symbol tied to Velchanos, the storm god, but also to sacrifice life, given to appease the deep. The unbroken circle suggested a seal, a lock. If the keystone existed, it was the final piece of the prophecy, not a summons, but a choice. At dawn, they set out. The boat cutting through a sea turned eerily calm, its surface a mirror reflecting Santorini's cliffs. Nia Kameni loomed ahead, its sulphurous steam curling into the sky. The spires stood silent, their white marble streaked with ash, a city caught between worlds. Elena suited up, the slab strapped to her chest, its weight a familiar burden. "If I don't surface in 20 minutes, she told Giannis, "get out. Don't come after me." He scowled. "Not happening, boss. We're a team." Kostas clapped her shoulder. "Find the bull, Kyria. End it." She dove, the water colder now, a deep blue threaded with gold. At 60 feet, the seafloor emerged, volcanic rock, silt, and the stone arch she'd seen before, its glyphs glowing faintly. The bronze bull statue stood nearby, its horns tilted toward a crevice in the rock. Her flashlight beam caught a glint within, a circular stone, no bigger than her fist, etched with the same unbroken circle as the slab, the keystone. As she reached for it, the caldera pulsed a low, resonant thud that rattled her teeth. The slab flared, its light merging with the keystones, and a vision slammed into her. the white stone city at its peak, harbors bustling, golden domes gleaming. Then the eruption lava rivers, towering waves, a priest in a bull mask plunging a trident into an altar, blood pooling in its basin. The voice intoned, "The worthy seal the deep, the unworthy break it." Her fingers closed around the keystone, its surface warm and smooth. The crevice widened, revealing a hollow in the seafloor, a socket, perfectly round, lined with Minoan spirals, the altar's twin. She hesitated, the slab's heat urging her forward. Theron had broken the pact with greed. The Minoans had sealed it with sacrifice. She could end it not with blood, but with intent. The worthy wait, not rule. She pressed the keystone into the socket, the slab's glyphs aligning with its own. A tremor rippled through the sea, and the golden light dimmed, the spires sinking slowly back into the depths. The caldera's pulse softened, then stopped. No vision came this time, just silence, heavy and final. Atlantis retreated, its bones settling into the dark. Elena surfaced, gasping, the slab dark in her hands. The boat bobbed above, Giannis and Costas hauling her aboard. "It's done," she said, peeling off her mask. The keystone locked it. No more rising. Costas stared at the calming waves. "The old ones are quiet now. You feel it?" She nodded, relief washing over her. The city hadn't drowned again. It had rested, its judgment satisfied. The prophecy wasn't about destruction or dominion, but balance. The Minoans had known, and she'd honored their plea. Back at Akrotiri, the dig site buzzed with new energy. Elena cataloged the slab, its glyphs inert, a relic once more. Giannis sketched the spires from memory, his drawings sharp despite his bandages. Costas bartered tales of the sea with local fishermen. The curse lifted from his voice. The Order of the Saffron Veil hadn't returned, perhaps scattered by Theron's fall, or watching from shadows. Clytemnestra's fate remained a mystery, her saffron threads a whisper on the wind. Weeks later, Elena stood at the cliff's edge. The caldera stretched below, its waters blue and still. She'd sent Schliemann's journal to Athens, annotated with her findings, minus the keystone's location. Let the scholars argue over Atlantis. She'd keep its heart safe. A letter from Nikos Stavros arrived that morning, gruff but proud. "You've outdone me, Voss. There is yours now." She smiled, the slab tucked in her pack. The deep remembered, but so did she. Atlantis slept, not lost, its lessons carved into her bones. The sea had judged, and she'd proven worthy not to rule, but to protect. The caldera whispered no more, its silence a promise kept. As the sun dipped into the Aegean, casting molten light across the waves, Elena turned back to the ruins. There was work to do, truths to unearth, stories to tell, and this time, she'd write the ending. Story 3. The Pyramid's Hidden Chamber. The sun hung low over the Giza Plateau, casting long shadows from the Great Pyramid's weathered limestone blocks. Dr. Evelyn Harper adjusted her wide-brimmed hat, wiping sweat from her brow as the relentless Egyptian heat bore down. A seasoned archaeologist with a Ph.D. from Yale and a stubborn streak to match. She'd spent years chasing whispers of a secret chamber beneath Khufu's monument, a void uncharted by modern scans, dismissed by her peers as fantasy. But Evelyn wasn't one for giving up. Her latest find, a papyrus fragment from a Bedouin trader, had reignited her obsession. Scrawled in faded hieratic script, it spoke of a chamber of the silent stars, sealed by a pharaoh's curse and guarded by riddles older than the sands. Beside her stood Karim, a wiry local guide with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. He'd grown up in the shadow of the pyramids, weaving tales of jinn and lost kings for tourists, but his knowledge of the desert was unmatched. "You sure about this, Doc?" he asked, squinting at the horizon where a dust storm brewed. "The wind's got a bad feel today." "I've never been sure," Evelyn replied, clutching the papyrus. She pointed to a faint depression near the pyramid's base, barely visible beneath centuries of drift. The text says the entrance aligns with Sirius at dusk. That's tonight. We dig now, or we lose it. Kareem shrugged, hefting a shovel. Your funeral, maybe mine too. They set to work, the rhythmic scrape of metal on sand blending with the distant howl of the approaching storm. Hours passed, the sky bruising purple, until Kareem's blade struck something solid. A slab of basalt, smooth as glass, emerged from the earth, etched with a single cartouche, Khufu's name, encircled by a serpent swallowing its tail. Evelyn's pulse quickened. Ouroboros, she murmured. The cycle of eternity. This is it. She traced the symbol, and with a groan that echoed like a waking beast, the slab shifted, revealing a narrow shaft plunging into darkness. A stale, ancient breath wafted up, carrying whispers of myrrh and decay. They descended, headlamps cutting through the gloom. The walls glistened with damp, adorned with star charts and glyphs Evelyn recognized as pre-dynastic, far older than Khufu's reign. At the shaft's end, a bronze door loomed, its surface inlaid with lapis lazuli in the shape of constellations. A riddle was carved above it. Speak my name, ye who seek the stars, for I am the light that burns the dark. Sirius, Evelyn said aloud, her voice trembling with certainty. The door shuddered, then swung open, revealing a chamber vast and domed, its ceiling a mosaic of twinkling quartz mimicking the night sky. In the center stood a sarcophagus, not of stone but of a strange, iridescent metal that pulsed faintly. Beside it lay a plinth bearing a scroll, its edges crumbling but its ink vivid as if freshly written. Evelyn unrolled it, her breath catching. The text was a prophecy, penned in a mix of hieroglyphs and an unknown script. When the dog star wanes and the river turns red, the silent ones shall rise. The world shall know their wrath, and the sons of men shall kneel. Below it, a map depicted the Nile, dotted with symbols she couldn't decipher yet. Kareem whistled low. That's no bedtime story, Doc. That's trouble. Before she could respond, a shadow flickered at the chamber's edge. A man stepped into the light, tall, hawk-nosed, with a tailored suit incongruous against the ancient stone. Dr. Victor Moreau, a rival archaeologist with a reputation for ruthlessness and a knack for showing up where he wasn't wanted. His cold smile gleamed like a blade. Well done, Evelyn. I knew you'd find it. Now, step aside. You followed me, she spat, clutching the scroll. This isn't yours. It's not yours either, Moreau countered, nodding to two armed thugs emerging behind him. It belongs to the Order of the Saffron Veil. They've waited centuries for this prophecy, and I'm their humble servant. Evelyn's mind raced. The Order, a secretive cabal, rumored to trace its roots to the priests of Amun-Ra, obsessed with controlling Egypt's mystical past. She dismissed them as myth, but here they were, guns and all. You're insane, she said. This isn't some treasure hunt. It's a warning. Moreau laughed, a dry, mirthless sound. A warning for the weak, power for the worthy. Hand it over, or Kareem here learns what a bullet tastes like. Kareem tensed, but Evelyn held up a hand. Wait. She needed time. Her eyes flicked to the sarcophagus, its surface now glowing brighter, a low hum filling the air. Something was waking. Reluctantly, she tossed the scroll at Moreau's feet. He snatched it up, his triumph short-lived as the chamber trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling, and the sarcophagus lid cracked open with a sound like thunder. A figure rose tall, skeletal, its skin a lattice of shimmering scales. Its eyes burned like twin suns, and when it spoke, its voice was a chorus of 1,000 whispers. Who dares disturb the silent stars? Moreau froze, the scroll slipping from his grasp. Evelyn grabbed Kareem and bolted for the door, but the thugs opened fire, their bullets sparking uselessly off the creature's form. It raised a hand, and the men crumpled, their screams cut short as their bodies withered to husks. Moreau stumbled back, babbling, I serve the Order. I The entity turned its gaze on him, and he fell silent, collapsing in a heap. Evelyn and Kareem reached the shaft, scrambling upward as the chamber shook harder, the prophecy's words echoing in her mind. The silent ones shall rise. They emerged into the night, the storm now raging, sand whipping their faces. The pyramid loomed above, its peak lost in swirling clouds. Evelyn clutched the papyrus fragment, her only clue left. "We can't let this spread," she said, breathless. "Whatever that was, it's tied to the prophecy." Kareem nodded, grim. "Then we find the rest of it, before they do." Behind them, the ground rumbled, and a faint glow pulsed from the shaft. Across the Nile, the river glinted red under the rising moon, as if stained with blood. Evelyn's heart pounded. The mystery was far from solved, it had only begun. Evelyn and Kareem stumbled through the storm, the wind howling like a chorus of enraged spirits. Sand stung their skin, but they pressed on, the eerie red glow of the Nile urging them away from the pyramid. Evelyn's mind churned, piecing together the papyrus fragment she still clutched. The glyphs hinted at a second location, the House of the Serpent, where the prophecy's next verse lay hidden. She knew enough of ancient Egyptian cosmology to suspect it tied to the god Set, the chaotic trickster whose domain was the desert and the stars. But where? "We need shelter," Kareem shouted over the gale, pointing to a cluster of Bedouin tents flickering in the distance. "And a plan. Before that thing crawls out." They reached the encampment, greeted by wary eyes and the smell of roasting goat. An elder named Zara, her face etched with decades of sun and wisdom, offered them tea and a scrutinizing stare. "You've stirred the old ones," she said, her voice low, the air tastes of their anger. Evelyn hesitated, then showed her the papyrus. "We found this. It speaks of the silent stars and a rising. Do you know the House of the Serpent?" Zara's eyes widened, tracing the faded ink. "That's no tale for children. The house is the Temple of Set, buried south of Saqqara. My grandfather spoke of it, a place of shadow and riddles, lost when the sand swallowed it." She paused, then added, "But beware. The Order of the Veil seeks it too. They've been sniffing around the villages, offering gold for secrets." Kareem cursed under his breath. "Moreau's dogs. They're not done with us." "Then we move fast," Evelyn said, determination hardening her voice. "Can you guide us, Zara?" The elder nodded reluctantly. "At dawn, the storm will hide us tonight." By morning, the tempest had settled into an uneasy calm, the sky a bruised tapestry of gray and gold. Zara led them across the dunes in a battered jeep, her grandson Amir a lanky teenager with a knack for mechanics tagging along. The journey to Saqqara was tense, the horizon shimmering with heat, and the faint hum of something unnatural trailing them. Evelyn pored over the papyrus, cross-referencing it with her mental catalog of Egyptian lore. Set's temple wasn't just a myth. Fragments of its existence lingered in the Book of the Dead, tied to a ritual of balance between chaos and order. If the Silent Ones were Set's minions or worse, his masters, the prophecy could be a key to their dominion. They reached Saqqara by midday, the step pyramid of Djoser rising like a jagged tooth against the sky. Zara pointed to a ravine beyond, half-choked with sand. "There, the old ones say, the temple sank when Set's priests defied the gods." Evelyn's team descended, tools in hand. Hours of digging revealed a lintel carved with serpents, their eyes glinting with inlaid obsidian. Below it, a tunnel yawned, its walls slick with moisture and etched with star maps mirroring those in Giza. The air grew thick, oppressive, as if the earth itself resented their intrusion. Inside, the temple unfolded a labyrinth of chambers lit by veins of phosphorescent stone. At its heart stood an altar, flanked by statues of Set with jackal heads, their spears crossed. On the altar rested a bronze tablet, its surface engraved with the prophecy's next verse. "Beneath the jackal's gaze, the river's blood shall flow. The silent ones shall claim the sky, and the third key shall wake the storm." A crude map pointed east, toward Karnak. Before Evelyn could transcribe it, gunfire erupted. Moreau's thugs stormed the chamber, led by a woman in saffron robes, High Priestess Nefertari of the Order, her face serene yet ruthless. "You're persistent, Doctor Harper," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "But the Silent Ones belong to us." "You don't understand," Evelyn shot back, clutching the tablet. "This isn't power, it's a cage breaking open." Nefertari smirked. "A cage will leash," she signaled, and her men advanced, but the temple trembled. The statue's eyes flared red, and a wind howled through the chamber, carrying whispers in a tongue older than human speech. The floor cracked, and a serpentine shadow coiled upward Set's essence, or something worse. Karim yanked Evelyn back as the entity lashed out, its tail shattering stone. Nefertari's men fired wildly, but the shadow swallowed them, their screams fading into silence. The priestess stood her ground, chanting in Coptic, a golden amulet glowing at her throat. The creature paused as if bound, but its fury pulsed stronger. "Run!" Zara yelled, dragging Amir toward the tunnel. Evelyn grabbed the tablet, and they fled, the temple collapsing behind them in a roar of dust and ruin. They emerged gasping, the ravine now a scar of rubble. Nefertari's fate was unclear, buried, or worse. Evelyn studied the tablet, her hands shaking. Karnak's next. The third key. We're running out of time. Karim glanced at the sky, where clouds churned unnaturally. And they're waking up. The Nile glimmered in the distance, its waters deepening to crimson. Across Egypt, faint tremors rippled, and in the villages, whispers spread of shadows moving under the stars. Evelyn knew the prophecy wasn't just a relic, it was alive, unfolding with every step they took. The jeep rattled across the desert, its engine groaning under the strain of the uneven terrain. Evelyn sat in the passenger seat, the bronze tablet balanced on her knees, her fingers tracing its etched lines as the sun dipped toward the horizon. Karim drove, his jaw tight, while Zara and Amir huddled in the back, whispering prayers to ward off the unease that clung to them like damp cloth. The air buzzed with a strange electricity, and every so often, the ground shivered, a subtle reminder that the Silent Ones were stirring. "Karnak's a day's ride," Karim said, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. "If the Order's still out there, they'll beat us to it." "They won't," Evelyn replied, though doubt gnawed at her. Nefertari's survival seemed unlikely, but the Order of the Saffron Veil had deep roots. Fanatics didn't die easily. She focused on the tablet's map, a jagged line from Saqqara to the Temple of Amun-Ra at Karnak, marked by a symbol resembling a solar disk pierced by a spear. The third key. Her mind raced through history. Karnak, the spiritual heart of Thebes, had been a nexus of power under pharaohs like Ramses II. If the prophecy tied to Amun-Ra's cult, the Silent Ones might predate even him, lurking in Egypt's primordial past. Zara leaned forward, her voice cutting through the engine's drone. "My grandfather said Karnak hides a chamber beneath the hypostyle hall. The priest called it the Eye of Ra, said it watched the stars. If your key's anywhere, it's there." Evelyn nodded, piecing it together. The Eye of Ra, a mythic symbol of divine wrath and protection, could be literal, a relic tied to the prophecy's celestial roots. "Then that's where we go," she said. "But we'll need more than shovels this time." Amir perked up, grinning despite the tension. "I've got a cousin in Luxor, runs a garage. He's got tools, maybe even a boat if the Nile's our way in." "Good," Karim said, "because I don't trust the roads. Not with the river turning red and the sky acting like it's got a fever." Night fell as they neared the Nile's banks, the water now a deep arterial crimson that reflected the moon like a bloodshot eye. They camped under a date palm, the silence broken only by the river's eerie gurgle and the occasional howl of a jackal. Evelyn couldn't sleep, her dreams plagued by visions. A man in a heretic's crown, Akhenaten, the pharaoh who'd forsaken the old gods, pointing to a starless sky as shadows devoured the sun. She woke drenched in sweat, the tablet's weight a cold comfort in her hands. At dawn, they pressed on, the jeep hugging the river until Luxor's sprawl appeared mud brick homes dwarfed by the ancient ruins of Thebes. Amir's cousin, Hassan, met them at a cluttered garage, his oil-stained hands offering a warm grip. "Heard the river's cursed," he said, eyeing the crimson flow. "Folks say fish are dying, and the birds won't sing. You sure about this?" "Sure as I can be," Evelyn replied, trading a wad of cash for a motorboat and a crate of gear crowbars, ropes, a handheld sonar. Hassan threw in a flare gun, muttering, "For the gin." The Nile carried them south, its current sluggish and thick, as if resisting their passage. Karnak's silhouette loomed ahead, its pylons and obelisks stark against the bruised sky. They docked near the sacred lake, slipping past tourists and guards under the guise of dusk. The hypostyle hall awaited a forest of 134 colossal columns, their shadows stretching like fingers across the stone floor. Evelyn's headlamp swept over carvings of Amun-Ra, his ram-headed form cradling the sun disk. The air hummed, heavier here, as if the temple itself breathed. Zara pointed to a worn relief near the hall's edge, a solar disk pierced by a spear, matching the tablet's symbol. "The eye," she whispered. Evelyn pressed it, and the stone shifted, revealing a spiral stair descending into darkness. The team followed, the walls narrowing, until they emerged in a circular chamber. Its dome glittered with lapis stars, and at its center stood a pedestal bearing a golden orb, the Eye of Ra, its surface etched with glyphs that pulsed faintly. Evelyn reached for it, but a voice cut through the stillness. "Not yet, Dr. Harper." Nefertari stepped from the shadows, her saffron robes tattered, but her amulet blazing. Behind her, a dozen Order acolytes fanned out, their eyes glassy with zeal. "You've led us straight to it. The Silent Ones will reward us." "You're a fool," Evelyn snapped, stepping between the orb and Nefertari. "This isn't a gift, it's a trigger. The river, the tremors, it's all connected." Nefertari's smile was cold, "And we'll wield it. The world's knelt too long to lesser gods." She raised her amulet, chanting, and the orb flared, its light searing the chamber. The floor quaked, and from the shadows rose figures tall, scale-skinned, their sun-like eyes unblinking. The Silent Ones. Karim fired the flare gun, its red arc scattering the acolytes, but the entities advanced, untouched. Evelyn grabbed the orb, its heat scalding her palms, and the prophecy's third verse burned into her mind. "When the eye beholds the storm, the Silent Ones shall reign." The fourth key lies where the falcon soars, and the end begins anew. A vision followed Falcon Island, far south near Aswan. The chamber buckled, columns toppling as the Silent Ones surged. Nefertari laughed, exultant, until one turned on her, its touch reducing her to ash. Evelyn's team bolted up the stairs, the orb clutched tight, emerging as Karnak shuddered behind them. The sky churned with black clouds, lightning clawing the horizon, and the Nile's red tide swelled, lapping at the ruins. "We've got the third key," Evelyn gasped, the orb's weight anchoring her resolve. "Falcon Island's next, but they're awake now and they're not stopping." Karim stared at the collapsing temple, then the storm. "Neither are we." The motorboat sliced through the Nile's crimson tide, its engine snarling against the thickening current. Evelyn gripped the Eye of Ra, its golden surface still warm in her hands, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. The storm raged overhead, black clouds swirling into unnatural shapes, vortices that seemed to watch them, their edges crackling with violet lightning. The air tasted of ozone and something older, something metallic and bitter, as if the Silent Ones' awakening had tainted the very atmosphere. Karim wrestled the wheel, his knuckles white. "This river's fighting us," he shouted over the wind, glancing at the churning waters. Waves slapped the hull, red as blood and flecked with strange silvery foam that clung like spider webs. Zara clutched the boat's edge, murmuring prayers, while Amir scanned the sonar. his youthful bravado replaced by a tight-lipped focus. "Something's moving down there," he said, voice shaky. "Big. Too big." Evelyn's stomach twisted. She peered over the side, the orb's glow casting an eerie light across the surface. Shadows darted beneath long, serpentine forms weaving through the depths. Not fish, not crocodiles, something ancient, roused by the prophecies unfolding. "They're following us," she said, her mind racing. The silent ones aren't just waking, they're mobilizing. The boat lurched as a massive shape breached, a scaled tail thrashing the water before vanishing again. Zara cried out, and Kareem gunned the engine, veering toward the western bank. "Falcon Island still hours away," he growled. "We won't make it if those things catch up. We don't have a choice," Evelyn shot back, clutching the orb tighter. The third verse echoed in her head. "The fourth key lies where the falcon soars, and the end begins anew." Falcon Island, near Aswan, was their last hope, a remote speck in the Nile, tied to Horus, the falcon-headed god of the sky. If the prophecy's keys were a sequence, this orb was only a piece of the puzzle. But what would the fourth unleash? Salvation or annihilation? A crack of thunder split the sky, and the sonar blipped wildly. Amir's eyes widened. "It's right under us." Before anyone could react, the boat jolted, tilting violently as something rammed it from below. Evelyn stumbled, the orb slipping from her grasp and rolling toward the edge. She lunged, catching it just as a clawed limb, black, glistening, and studded with barbs, burst from the water, slashing the air where she'd stood. Kareem fired Hassan's flare gun, the red streak igniting the creature's hide. It shrieked a sound like grinding stone and recoiled, giving them a fleeting glimpse of its form, a nightmare of scales and spines, its head crowned with eyeless sockets that somehow saw. The boat rocked as it submerged, but the reprieve was brief. More shapes rose in the distance, their silhouettes breaking the horizon like jagged teeth. "We can't outrun them," Zara said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "We need a diversion." Evelyn scanned the shore, spotting a crumbling jetty half submerged in the red tide. "There," she pointed. "Get us close. I've got an idea." Kareem nodded, swinging the boat toward the bank. As they neared, Evelyn rummaged through their gear, pulling out a bundle of dynamite. Hassan had slipped into the crate intended for stubborn dig sites, now their lifeline. She rigged it with a short fuse, her hands trembling but precise. "Everyone, brace!" she yelled, lighting the wick and hurling it into the water behind them. The explosion erupted in a geyser of red foam, the shockwave scattering the pursuing shadows. The boat surged forward, propelled by the blast, and they scraped onto the jetty's remains, abandoning ship as it splintered against the stone. They sprinted inland, the desert stretching before them, the storm's roar mingling with unearthly howls from the river. Evelyn clutched the orb, its light dimming as if sensing the chaos. "Aswan south," she panted. "We'll find transport, something, anything." Hours blurred into a desperate trek across the dunes, the sky darkening as the storm tightened its grip. By midnight, they stumbled into a ramshackle village on the Nile's edge, its mud huts trembling under the wind. A grizzled fisherman, his face weathered like driftwood, eyed them warily from his doorway. "You bring death with you," he rasped, gesturing to the orb. "The river's alive tonight. We need a boat to Falcon Island," Evelyn said, offering the last of their cash. "Name your price." He hesitated, then nodded, leading them to a battered felucca hidden under palm fronds. "No gold's worth this," he muttered, "but I've seen the signs." The falcon's shadow falls again. The felucca cut through the Nile's eerie calm, the crimson waters parting like a wound. Falcon Island emerged at dawn, a jagged outcrop crowned with ruins, its cliffs carved with Horus's likeness. They docked, climbing a winding path to a temple perched atop the peak. Its entrance gaped like a maw, flanked by falcon statues with eyes of polished jet. Inside, the air was cold, thick, with the scent of dust and forgotten offerings. A circular chamber awaited, its walls ringed with niches holding clay jars offerings to Horus, sealed for millennia. At the center stood a plinth, empty save for a shallow indentation shaped like the Eye of Ra. Evelyn placed the orb within, and the chamber hummed, the jars rattling as if alive. Light flared, and the fourth verse burned into the air, its glyphs hovering like fire. Where the falcon soars, the final gate is torn. The silent ones shall flood the earth, unless the blood of kings restores the dawn. A vision followed a cavern beneath the island, a pool of liquid gold, and a figure cloaked in shadow, holding a dagger to a royal throat. The floor shuddered, splitting to reveal a stair descending into the earth. Evelyn's team exchanged glances, the weight of the prophecy sinking in. Blood of kings, she murmured. A sacrifice or a lineage? We need to know which. They descended, the walls slick with moisture, the hum growing louder. At the stair's end lay the cavern from her vision, a vast hollow lit by veins of glowing quartz, its center dominated by a pool of molten gold that bubbled and steamed. Above it hung a slab of obsidian, etched with a final riddle. The crownless king must bleed, or the world shall drown in night. Before they could decipher it, the cavern shook, and the silent ones emerged, not shadows now, but towering forms of scale and bone, their sun-like eyes searing the air. They moved with purpose, encircling the pool, their whispers coalescing into a chant that made Evelyn's ears bleed. Karim drew his knife. Zara raised a crowbar, and Amir clutched a rope, but Evelyn's gaze locked on the slab. A crownless king, she repeated, her mind flashing to Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh, despised by the old gods, his bloodline erased from history, or so they'd thought. A figure staggered from the shadows, Hassan, battered and wild-eyed, his shirt torn. They took me, he gasped. The order tracked us from Luxor, said I'm the last of some line, dragged me here. He pointed to a scar on his chest, a crude falcon glyph carved into his skin. Evelyn's breath caught. The blood of kings. You're descended from him, Akhenaten's forgotten heirs. The silent ones advanced, their chant peaking, the pool flaring as if ready to burst. Evelyn grabbed the dagger from the vision's echo, its blade cold in her hand. Hassan, it's you or the world. Your blood can stop this. Hassan nodded, grim but resolute. Do it. She hesitated, then pressed the blade to his palm, drawing a thin line of blood. He stepped to the pool, letting it drip into the gold. The cavern roared, the silent ones shrieking as the liquid flared white, then dimmed. Their forms wavered, collapsing into ash, the pool hardening into a dull sheen. Silence fell, broken only by their ragged breaths. The storm outside quieted, the Nile's red tide receding on the sonar screen. Hassan slumped, alive but pale, the scar on his chest fading. Evelyn stared at the slab, its riddle now blank. It's over, she whispered. The dawn's restored, but as they climbed back to the surface, a faint tremor rippled through the island, and in the distance, a single star winked out. The prophecy was silenced, but something, somewhere, still watched. The felucca rocked gently as they sailed away from Falcon Island, the dawn painting the sky in hues of amber and rose. The Nile's crimson tide had faded to a murky brown, its surface calm once more, though an occasional ripple hinted at the depth's lingering unrest. Evelyn sat at the bow, the Eye of Ra cradled in her lap, its golden glow extinguished now just a relic, cold and silent. Beside her, Hassan leaned against the mast, a bandage wrapped around his hand where his blood had sealed the prophecy. His face was pale, but his eyes held a quiet strength, as if the weight of his lineage had finally settled into place. Karim steered, his sharp gaze scanning the horizon, while Zara and Amir huddled near the stern, sorting through their salvage gear. The silence between them was heavy, not with fear now, but with the exhaustion of survivors who'd stared into the abyss and walked away. The silent ones were gone, dissolved into ash beneath the island, but the tremor they'd felt as they left lingered in Evelyn's mind. A loose thread in a tapestry she thought she'd finished weaving. "We did it," Amir said, breaking the quiet. His voice was tentative, as if testing the truth of his own words. "The world didn't drown. That's a win, right?" Zara nodded, her weathered hands folding around a cup of tea she'd brewed over a small stove. "The old ones are at peace. For now." "For now?" Karim echoed, his brow furrowing. "You think there's more?" "There's always more," Evelyn said softly, her fingers tracing the orb's etched glyphs. The prophecy spoke of 4 keys, and we found them all: Giza, Saqqara, Karnak, here. The silent ones rose, and Hassan's blood stopped them. But that tremor. She trailed off, her archaeologist's instinct prickling. It felt like an echo, not an end. Hassan shifted, wincing as he adjusted his bandage. "You think I didn't bleed enough?" "No," Evelyn replied, meeting his gaze. "You were enough. The riddle 17th crownless king must bleed, and you did. Akhenaten's line hidden all these years. It worked." But the silent ones weren't the only thing tied to this. The order of the saffron veil, the river, the stars, they're pieces of something bigger. Karim snorted. "Bigger than waking ancient monsters? I'd rather not find out." But Evelyn's mind was already turning. The prophecy's final verse, "The end begins anew," hadn't fully clicked until now. She pulled out the papyrus fragment she'd kept since Giza, its edges worn, but its ink still legible. The hieratic script mentioned the Chamber of the Silent Stars, but beneath it, in a faint postscript she'd overlooked, was a phrase: "The 5th gate guards the balance, where the first king sleeps." Her breath caught. The first king, Narmer Menes, the unifier of Egypt. His tomb's never been found, but legends place it near Abydos, the cradle of the pharaohs. She looked up, her voice steadying. "The silent ones were a threat, but they were also a lock. We broke it, but there's a 5th key, a final safeguard." Zara's eyes narrowed. "You're saying this isn't over?" "Not yet," Evelyn admitted, "but it can be. If we find Narmer's tomb and secure the 5th gate, we restore the balance the silent ones disrupted. No more tremors, no more shadows." Karim groaned. "I was hoping for a nap, not another cursed hike." Amir grinned, hefting the sonar. "I'm in beats fixing engines in Luxor." Hassan straightened, his resolve hardening. "If my blood started this, I'll finish it." The decision was made. They turned the felucca north, toward Abydos, the Nile carrying them past villages where life resumed, fishermen casting nets, children laughing on the banks. The storm had passed, but the sky held a faint haze, a reminder of the chaos they'd quelled. Evelyn spent the journey studying the papyrus and the orb, cross-referencing them with her memory of Abydos's lore. Narmer, the first pharaoh, had bridged Upper and Lower Egypt, his reign a symbol of unity. If the silent ones were chaos incarnate, his resting place could be the counterweight, an anchor to seal them forever. They reached Abydos by dusk, the ancient necropolis sprawling under a violet sky. The temple of Osiris loomed, its sandstone walls etched with tales of death and rebirth. Evelyn led them past the tourist paths, following the papyrus's cryptic clues to a sunken wadi west of the ruins. Hours of digging revealed a limestone slab, its surface carved with a palette, the Narmer palette, a famous artifact depicting his triumph, but here in situ, marking his tomb. The slab shifted under their combined effort, revealing a shaft lined with alabaster. They descended, the air cool and thick with the scent of resin and time. At the bottom, a chamber unfolded modest compared to Giza's grandeur, but potent with purpose. A sarcophagus of black granite sat at its heart, flanked by jars of offerings and a single plinth bearing a crystal shard clear as glass, yet radiating a soft, white light. "The 5th key," Evelyn whispered, lifting it. It fit perfectly into a groove on the Eye of Ra, clicking into place with a sound like a bell. The chamber trembled, not with menace now, but with a settling, as if the earth exhaled. The sarcophagus glowed briefly, and an inscription flared on its lid. The balance holds when the first and last unite. The stars are silent, the dawn eternal. A vision washed over her Narmer, crowned and serene, placing the shard in the orb as priests chanted, sealing a pact with the gods. The silent ones, born of chaos before Egypt's dawn, were bound by this act, their power leashed until the order's meddling broke the keys. Hassan's blood had weakened them, and now, with Narmer's shard restored, the cycle was complete. The tremor they'd felt on Falcon Island ceased, replaced by a stillness that sank into their bones. The Nile outside ran clear, its waters reflecting a sky where every star burned bright. The team climbed back to the surface, the orb and shard now a single, inert relic in Evelyn's hands. "It's done," she said, her voice soft but certain. "The balance is back." Karim clapped Hassan on the shoulder. "You're a king and a hero. Not bad for a mechanic's cousin." Hassan smiled faintly. "Just glad I didn't have to bleed more." Zara gazed at the stars, her face peaceful. "The old ones rest. My grandfather would have liked this tale." Amir laughed, slinging the sonar over his shoulder. "Wait till I tell Luxor about this. They'll think I'm mad." They returned to the felucca, the night wrapping them in quiet triumph. Evelyn sat alone at the bow, the orb beside her, its purpose fulfilled. She'd chased a myth and found a truth, one that rewrote history and saved the present. The order was gone, their zeal buried with Nefertari. The silent ones were silenced. Their threat ended not with war, but with unity, the blood of a forgotten heir, and the will of a forgotten king. As the boat drifted toward Cairo, Evelyn penned a final note in her journal. "The pyramids hide more than treasure, they guard the world. We were the last key, and now it's locked." She closed the book, the horizon glowing with the promise of a new day. Years later, the Giza Plateau stood unchanged, its secrets safe beneath the sands. Evelyn, now graying, taught at a university in Alexandria, her lectures filled with hints of truths she'd never fully reveal. Karim ran a tour business, spinning tales of jinn with a knowing grin. Zara and Amir stayed in their village, guarding the stories of their ancestors. And Hassan, marked by a faint scar, lived quietly, a king without a crown, content in the life he'd reclaimed. The Nile flowed on, its waters clean and bright, whispering only to those who knew how to listen. The stars above shone steady, their silence a testament to a world preserved not by gods or monsters, but by a handful of souls who dared to finish what the ancients began. Story 4. The Palenque Sarcophagus. The jungle pressed in close, a suffocating quilt of emerald vines and dripping leaves that swallowed the sun whole. Sweat beaded on Dr. Elena Carver's brow as she hacked through the undergrowth, her machete glinting dully in the fractured light. A Yale-trained archaeologist with a stubborn streak wider than the Mississippi, Elena had spent her career chasing whispers of the impossible lost cities, forbidden texts, truths the world wasn't ready to hear. Now, at 38, with crow's feet etching her sun-weathered face, she stood on the edge of something monumental. Palenque, the ancient Mayan city nestled in Mexico's Chiapas highlands, had called to her like a siren song ever since she'd stumbled across a cryptic reference in a looted codex. The Lord of the Stars lies beneath, his chariot a bridge to the heavens. Beside her trudged Miguel Torres, a wiry local guide with eyes like obsidian and a grin that danced between mischief and menace. He'd grown up in these jungles, knew their secrets better than most, and carried a worn leather satchel stuffed with maps and rumors. "You're crazy, Doctora," he said, wiping his brow. "The elders say Pakal's tomb is cursed. You dig too deep, you wake something up." Elena smirked, brushing a strand of dark hair from her eyes. "I'm not here for curses, Miguel. I'm here for answers. The ruins of Palenque loomed ahead, their limestone pyramids rising like jagged teeth against the sky. The Temple of the Inscriptions, a stepped marvel crowned with a comb-like crest, dominated the scene. It was here, in 1952, that Alberto Ruz Luye had uncovered the tomb of Kinishjanab Pakal, the Mayan king whose sarcophagus lit a slab of stone carved with cryptic symbols had sparked decades of debate. Scholars called it a depiction of Pakal's descent into the underworld. Fringe theorists swore it showed him piloting a spacecraft, a king-turned-astronaut. Elena had always rolled her eyes at the latter, but that codex fragment nagged at her. What if there was more beneath the tomb? Something no one had dared to find. They reached the temple's base as the sun dipped low, painting the stones in hues of blood and gold. Elena's team, 2 grad students, and a grizzled historian named Professor Harold Grayson had set up camp nearby. Grayson, a bear of a man with a beard like steel wool, greeted her with a scowl. "You're late, and you smell like swamp rot." Elena ignored him, dropping her pack. "Did you get the GPR readings?" Ground-penetrating radar had been their gamble, a way to peer beneath the tomb without disturbing the Mexican government's strict preservation laws. Grayson nodded, handing her a tablet. The screen glowed with a grainy image, a void, rectangular and deep, hidden below Pakal's crypt. Elena's pulse quickened. This is it. Night fell fast, the jungle alive with the buzz of cicadas and the distant howl of a howler monkey. Under cover of darkness, they slipped into the temple, descending the narrow stone stairs to the tomb. The air grew thick, heavy with the scent of moss and thyme. Pakal's sarcophagus sat at the chamber's heart, its lid a masterpiece of glyphs and figures, a bearded king reclining, surrounded by serpents and stars. Elena traced her fingers over the carvings, her breath catching. "Miguel," the codex said beneath. "This void, it's our key," Grayson grunted, setting up a portable drill. "If we're wrong, we're finished. Jail time, at best." Elena shot him a look. "We're not wrong." The drill whined, biting into the floor beside the sarcophagus. Dust clouded the air, and then a hollow thud. They pried up a slab, revealing a shaft dropping into darkness. Miguel crossed himself, muttering a prayer to the Virgin, but Elena was already rigging a rope. "I'm going down." The descent was a plunge into oblivion, the beam of her headlamp slicing through the murk. She landed on a stone floor, her boots echoing in a space far larger than she'd expected. The walls were smooth, polished to a mirror sheen, and covered in glyphs unlike any she'd seen. Sharp angles, swirling patterns, a blend of Mayan precision and something alien. At the chamber's center stood a pedestal, and atop it rested a slab of obsidian, black as midnight and etched with golden lines. Elena's heart hammered. "A star map," she whispered, recognizing constellations no modern sky held. Miguel dropped beside her, his face pale. "Doctora, this isn't right. These walls, they hum." She felt it too, a vibration thrumming through her bones, like the pulse of a living thing. Before she could respond, Grayson's voice crackled over the radio. "Elena, get out! We've got company." A gunshot echoed above, sharp and final. She cursed, grabbing the obsidian slab and shoving it into her pack. "Move!" They scrambled up the rope, emerging to chaos. Grayson lay slumped against the sarcophagus, blood pooling beneath him. 2 figures in black tactical gear stood over him, their faces obscured by masks. A third stepped from the shadows, a tall man with silver hair and eyes like ice. "Dr. Carver," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "You found something that doesn't belong to you." Elena clutched the slab tighter. "Who the hell are you?" He smiled thinly. "Call me Victor Stahl. The Order of the Obsidian Veil thanks you for your work. Now, hand it over." Miguel lunged, swinging his machete, but Stahl was faster. A pistol barked, and Miguel crumpled, clutching his leg. Elena bolted, darting past the sarcophagus and up the stairs. The jungle swallowed her, branches clawing at her skin as she ran. Stahl's men gave chase, their shouts swallowed by the night. She ducked behind a crumbling stela, catching her breath, and pulled the slab from her pack. Its golden lines pulsed faintly, tracing a path across unfamiliar stars. A prophecy? A blueprint? She didn't know, but Stahl wanted it badly. Hours later, she stumbled into a village, exhausted and bloodied. An old woman, her face lined like ancient parchment, took her in, offering water and a mat by the fire. "You've seen Pakal's secret," the woman rasped, her eyes gleaming. "The Lord of the Stars flew beyond this world, left us his chariot. You hold its key." Elena stared at the slab, its hum growing louder. "What does it mean?" The woman smiled, toothless and cryptic. "The heavens are waking. Choose wisely, child." By dawn, Elena had slipped away, the slab tucked close. Stahl's men would come again, she felt it in her gut. The glyphs on the walls haunted her, their shapes hinting at a machine, a vessel, something buried deeper still. Pakal hadn't just ruled Palenque, he'd touched the cosmos. But why? And what did the Order want with it? As the sun rose over the jungle, painting the pyramids in fiery light, Elena vowed to find out. The mystery was hers now, a thread unraveling into the unknown. The slab's hum followed her, a siren call to the stars. The jungle swallowed Elena whole as she pressed deeper into its emerald heart. The obsidian slab, a heavy secret against her chest. Her lungs burned, each breath a ragged gasp snatched from the humid air. The distant shouts of Stahl's men faded, replaced by the relentless drone of insects and the rustle of unseen things slithering through the underbrush. She'd lost Miguel maybe for good, and Grayson's blood still stained her memory, a crimson smear on the tomb's cold stone. But the slab, with its golden veins pulsing like a heartbeat, drove her forward. It was more than an artifact. It was a question mark carved in starlight, and she'd be damned if she let the Order claim it. The village faded into the haze behind her, the old woman's words looping in her mind. The heavens are waking. Elena stumbled over a root, catching herself against a kapok tree, its gnarled bark rough under her palms. She pulled the slab free, her headlamp flickering as she studied it again. The glyphs weren't just a map, they shifted, subtly, as if alive. Constellations she didn't recognize spiraled into patterns, and at their center, a jagged symbol glowed brighter, a stepped pyramid pierced by a beam of light. Her gut twisted. The temple of the inscriptions, or something else buried deeper. A twig snapped behind her. She whirled, heart lurching, but it was only a tapir, its snout snuffling the earth before it lumbered off. She exhaled, shaky, and tucked the slab back into her pack. She needed help, someone who knew Mayan lore beyond the textbooks, someone who could decode this madness. Her mind flicked to Dr. Sofia Reyes, a reclusive epigrapher she'd met at a conference in Merida years ago. Sofia had a reputation for brilliance and a penchant for fringe theories perfect for this. Last Elena heard, Sofia was holed up in San Cristobal, a mountain town 3 days' trek from here. If she could dodge Stahl's goons that long, she might get answers. The next 2 days blurred into a grueling march. She slept in snatches, wedged in tree hollows or beneath fern canopies, her dreams plagued by visions of Pakal, his bearded face serene, hands gripping a machine that roared with fire. By the third day, her boots were caked in mud, and her water ran low. The jungle thinned as the terrain climbed, the air cooling with altitude. San Cristobal emerged like a mirage, its colonial rooftops glowing red against the pine-draped hills. Elena slipped into the town at dusk, her dirt-streaked face drawing stares from vendors hawking tamales and woven blankets. Sofia's house clung to a hillside, a ramshackle cottage with peeling paint and a sagging porch. Elena knocked, her knuckles raw. The door creaked open, revealing a woman in her 50s. Her silver-streaked hair pulled into a messy bun. Sophia's sharp brown eyes narrowed. "Carver, you look like hell." Elena managed a weak grin. "Feel like it too. Can I come in?" Sophia stepped aside, ushering her into a cluttered living room stacked with books, jade figurines, and yellowed maps. A wood stove crackled in the corner, casting dancing shadows. Elena spilled everything: the tomb, the void, the slab, Stahl's ambush. Sophia listened, her fingers steepled, until Elena slid the obsidian onto the table. The older woman's breath hitched. "Madre de Dios," she murmured, tracing the golden lines. "This isn't just Mayan. These angles, this precision, it's like nothing I've seen." She grabbed a magnifying glass, peering closer. "See this? The pyramid glyph, it's paired with a verb, tikax, to bind or tow bridge. And these stars, they're not ours. Not anymore." "What do you mean?" Elena leaned in, the slab's hum buzzing in her skull. Sophia tapped a constellation. "These match Pleiades, but shifted how they looked 2,000 years ago. Pakal's reign, 7th century. This isn't a map of now, it's a map of then. And this," she pointed to the pyramid symbol, "it's a location, a binding point. Maybe a machine, maybe a gate." Elena's pulse raced. "A chariot to the heavens," she whispered, the codex fragment clicking into place. Before Sophia could reply, the window shattered. Glass sprayed the room as a black-clad figure vaulted inside, a silenced pistol gleaming in his hand. Elena dove, dragging Sophia behind a bookshelf. The intruder fired, bullets chewing into wood and plaster. "The slab," he barked into a comms unit. "She's got it." Sophia yanked a machete from a wall mount, her eyes blazing. "Out the back!" They bolted through a kitchen door, spilling into an alley as more boots pounded the street. The chase tore through San Cristobal's cobblestone maze, Elena's legs screaming as she vaulted carts and ducked laundry lines. Sophia kept pace, slashing at a pursuer who got too close, his cry echoing off the walls. They hit the town's edge, plunging into the pine forest beyond. Moonlight filtered through the needles, painting the ground in silver patches. Elena risked a glance back. 3 figures, maybe 4, fanning out like wolves. "Who are these bastards?" she panted. Sophia's jaw tightened. "The Order of the Obsidian Veil, old as the conquistadors. They hoard secrets: Mayan, Aztec, anything tied to power. They've killed for less than this." They crouched behind a boulder, catching their breath. Elena pulled the slab out again, its glow brighter now, almost urgent. "If this is a gate, where's it lead?" Sophia squinted at it, her voice low. "The glyphs mentioned Xibalba, the underworld, but not like the myths. A place beyond stars, where Pakal went. If it's real, it's not just archaeology, it's everything." A branch cracked nearby. Elena tensed, but it was a familiar figure limping from the shadows. Miguel, his leg bandaged, his grin faint but alive. "Thought you ditched me, Doctora?" Relief flooded her, but it was short-lived. Floodlights blazed through the trees, and Stahl's voice cut the night, cold and commanding. "Dr. Carver, you're out of moves. Give me the slab, or we burn this forest down with you in it." His silhouette loomed, flanked by a dozen armed men. Elena gripped the slab, its hum now a roar in her ears. Sophia whispered, "It's waking up. Whatever it does, it's now or never." Miguel nodded, hefting a rock. "Fight or run, boss." The slab's light flared, casting their shadows long and sharp. Elena felt it pull, a tug toward something vast and uncharted. The jungle, the Order, Pakal's legacy, it all converged here, teetering on a razor's edge. The slab's light pulsed like a dying star, bathing the pine forest in an eerie golden glow that made the shadows twist and dance. Elena's fingers tightened around it, the hum vibrating up her arms, into her chest, as if it were syncing with her heartbeat. Stahl's floodlights bore down, pinning her, Sophia, and Miguel against the boulder like specimens under a microscope. His voice slithered through the night again, sharp and deliberate. "Last chance, Dr. Carver. That artifact belongs to us. Don't make this messy." His men fanned out, their silhouettes bristling with rifles closing the noose. Miguel shifted, his rock clutched like a grenade, his wounded leg trembling, but his eyes fierce. "We take a few with us, eh?" Sophia's machete glinted as she adjusted her grip, her voice a low growl. They won't get it without a fight, but Elena barely heard them. The slab's pull was overwhelming now, a magnetic lure tugging her toward something. She glanced at Sophia. "You said it's a gate. How do we open it?" Sophia's eyes flicked to the slab, then back to Stahl's advancing line. "The glyphs, there's a sequence. Touch the pyramid, then the star cluster. It's a guess, but a bullet cracked the boulder, showering them with shale. Elena ducked, her decision made. She pressed her thumb to the pyramid glyph, then slid it to the Pleiades like swirl. The slab shuddered, its golden lines flaring into a blinding cascade. The air split with a sound like tearing metal, and a rift opened 10 feet wide, shimmering like liquid obsidian, hovering just above the forest floor. Beyond it, a void swirled with pinpricks of light, not stars but something older, stranger. Stahl shouted, his composure cracking. "Stop her!" Elena grabbed Sophia and Miguel, shoving them toward the rift. "Go." Miguel hesitated, but Sophia yanked him through, her machete still raised. Elena followed, the slab searing her hands as she crossed the threshold. The world flipped, gravity warped, sound muted, and then they were somewhere else. They landed hard on a floor of polished black stone, smooth as glass and cold as ice. The air was thin, tasting of ozone and dust. Elena staggered to her feet, the slab dimming but still warm in her grip. Around them stretched a vast chamber, its walls soaring into darkness, etched with the same angular glyphs from the Palenque void. Massive pillars, carved with serpents and jaguars, flanked a central dais where a machine or a throne hulked, its contours sleek and metallic, studded with crystalline nodes that pulsed faintly. Above, a dome of translucent material revealed a sky ablaze with alien constellations, swirling nebulae, and a planet ringed in crimson. "Holy hell," Miguel breathed, clutching his leg. Sophia circled the dais, her awe tinged with dread. "This isn't Xibalba, not the underworld we know. It's a station, a waypost." Elena approached the machine, its surface humming under her touch. The slab slotted into a groove on its side, clicking into place like a key. The nodes flared, and a holographic display flickered to life, glyphs and star charts spiraling in midair, overlaid with a figure, Pakal, his regal headdress unmistakable, speaking in a tongue that echoed through the chamber. Sophia's eyes widened. "It's classic Mayan," he's saying. "I crossed the abyss to guard the seed. The bridge must not fall to the veiled ones." Before Elena could process it, the rift behind them shimmered again. Stahl stepped through, his silver hair glinting, his pistol leveled. 6 of his men followed, fanning out with military precision. "Impressive, Dr. Carver," he said, his smile venomous. "You've done the hard part. Now step away." Elena's jaw clenched. "What's the seed, Stahl? What's this place?" He chuckled, holstering his gun as if she were no threat. Pakal didn't just rule Palenque. He found something technology, knowledge, a gift from beyond. The orders chased it for centuries. Its power, pure and simple, and you've led us right to it. Miguel lunged, swinging his rock, but a soldier's rifle butt caught him in the gut, dropping him. Sophia slashed at another, her machete sparking off armor, before a taser sent her sprawling. Elena backed toward the machine, her mind racing. The hologram shifted, Pakal's voice growing urgent. "The bridge wakes the seed. The veiled must not hold it." Stahl advanced, his men circling. "Hand it over, Elena, or we take it from your corpse." The machine thrummed louder, its nodes pulsing in sync with the slab. Elena's hand hovered over a crystalline lever, instinct screaming. She pulled it. The chamber shook, the dome above cracking as light poured in, blinding, searing, alive. Stahl shielded his eyes, cursing as the hologram flared into a map. Earth, its surface dotted with glowing points. Palenque, Teotihuacan, Giza, others linked by shimmering threads. The seed wasn't here, it was everywhere, a network waking up. A roar split the air, not mechanical but primal. From the shadows beyond the pillars, shapes emerged, tall, sinewy, their eyes glowing like embers. Jaguar-like, but upright, their claws glinting with obsidian sheen. Guardians. Stahl's men opened fire, bullets ricocheting off stone as the creatures pounced, tearing through armor like paper. Elena grabbed Sophia and Miguel, dragging them toward the rift as chaos erupted. Stahl bellowed, "Hold them!" but his voice drowned in snarls and screams. They stumbled back through the rift, landing in the pine forest as it snapped shut behind them. The floodlights were gone. Stahl's remaining men, scattered or dead on the other side. Elena clutched the slab, its light fading to a dull glow. Sophia coughed, wiping blood from her lip. What was that?" Miguel groaned, sitting up. Pakal's watchdogs, maybe. Or worse. Elena stared at the slab. The map burned into her mind. A network. A seed. Power the Order craved and now knew existed. Dawn broke over the hills, painting the trees in soft pink. The slab was quiet, but Elena felt its pull still, a whisper of unfinished business. Stahl was trapped for now, but the Order wouldn't stop. The Guardians had bought them time, but the mystery was far from solved. Where did Pakal go? What was the seed? And how many more bridges waited to be opened? The forest exhaled around them, a damp, living thing stirring in the pale dawn light. Elena's hands trembled as she gripped the slab, its surface cool now, the golden lines dormant but etched into her memory like a brand. Sophia knelt beside Miguel, tearing a strip from her shirt to bind his bruised ribs, her sharp eyes darting to the trees. "We can't stay here," she muttered, voice taut. "The Orders like roaches crush a few and more crawl out." Miguel winced, forcing a grin. "Good. I owe them a few hits." Elena barely heard them. Her mind churned, replaying the holographic map, glowing nodes across the earth, a web of ancient sites pulsing with purpose. Palenque was just one thread in a tapestry spanning continents. Teotihuacan, Giza, Angkor Wat, and others she couldn't place. The seed Pakal guarded wasn't a single object, it was a system, a legacy buried in stone and starlight. But for what? Power, Stahl had said. A gift from beyond. The Guardians, those jaguar-like sentinels, hinted at something worth protecting, something worth killing for. And now the Order knew it existed. A rustle snapped her back. She tensed, expecting Stahl's men, but it was a howler monkey, its guttural cry echoing through the canopy. She exhaled, shaky, and stood. Sophia's right. We move. San Cristobal's compromised Stahl's probably got eyes there already. Sophia nodded, hauling Miguel up. Where to? You've got that look, Carver, like you've got a crazy plan. Elena's lips twitched, a ghost of a smile. Teotihuacan, the map showed it next, a node brighter than the others. If Pakal's network is waking, that's where we'll find the next piece. Miguel groaned. Mexico City? That's days away, Doctora. And we've got no gear, no cash, nada. Elena hefted her pack, the slab a reassuring weight. We've got this. It's enough for now. Sophia arched a brow but didn't argue, her machete swinging at her hip as they started downhill, the jungle thinning into scrubland. The trek was brutal, 2 days of dodging patrols, bartering with farmers for tortillas and water, sleeping in ditches under star-strewn skies. The slab stayed quiet, but Elena felt its pull grow stronger as they neared Mexico City, a faint hum buzzing in her bones. Teotihuacan loomed on the horizon by the third day, its pyramids the sun, the moon, the avenue of the dead rising like sentinels from the dusty plain. Tourists milled about, oblivious, but Elena's gaze fixed on the pyramid of the sun. The map's node had pulsed there, a heartbeat in stone. They slipped past security at dusk, the site emptying as shadows stretched long and eerie. The pyramid steps were steep, worn smooth by centuries, and Elena's legs burned as she climbed. At the summit, she knelt, running her hands over the stone. There's got to be something, a marker, a seam. Sophia scanned the glyphs carved into a low altar, her fingers tracing a familiar shape, the stepped pyramid and star cluster from the slab. "Here," she said, pressing down. A faint click sounded, and a panel slid open, revealing a shallow recess. Elena pulled the slab from her pack and slotted it in. The pyramid trembled, a low rumble rolling through the earth. The slab flared, its golden lines spiraling upward in a beam that pierced the darkening sky. A holographic display bloomed a new map, this time with Teotihuacan at its center, threads branching to Chichen Itza, Machu Picchu, and a dozen other sites. Pacal's voice echoed again, fainter now. The seed is scattered, bound by the bridges. The veiled must not unmake the covenant. The beam intensified, and the stone beneath them split, revealing a narrow shaft dropping into darkness. Before they could move, floodlights blazed from below. Helicopters buzzed overhead, their rotors chopping the air. Stahl's voice crackled through a megaphone, icy and triumphant. "You're predictable. Dr. Carver, did you think I'd stay trapped?" Elena cursed. How had he escaped the Guardians? Armed figures repelled from the choppers surrounding the pyramid's base. Stahl emerged from one, his silver hair gleaming, a jagged scar now slashing across his cheek. The rift reopened, he called up, smirking. "Your little pets didn't finish the job." Miguel hefted a loose stone, ready to hurl it, but Elena grabbed his arm. "Wait." She eyed the shaft. "We go down. It's our only shot." Sophia nodded, rigging a rope from her pack. They descended fast, Stahl's men closing in, bullets pinging off the pyramid's edge. The shaft opened into a chamber smaller than Palenque's, its walls pulsing with crystalline veins that lit the space in a soft blue glow. At its heart stood a pedestal, and atop it, a fist-sized orb obsidian shot through with golden flecks, hovering an inch above the surface. Elena reached for it, but Sophia grabbed her wrist. "Look." The walls shifted, glyphs animating into a sequence. Pacal, boarding a sleek craft, its hull shimmering as it rose into a sky of swirling stars. The orb glowed brighter, and a voice not Pacal's spoke, deep and resonant. "The seed is life. The bridges are its keepers. Awaken one, awaken all." The chamber shook, dust raining down as the orb pulsed faster. Stahl's boots hit the floor behind them, his pistol drawn. "Step away, Elena. That's mine." His men fanned out, but the chamber's hum turned into a screech. The orb lifted higher, splitting the air with a shockwave that knocked everyone back. Elena scrambled up, clutching the pedestal as the walls flared, revealing a new hologram, Earth, its nodes igniting one by one. Chichen Itza, Giza, Stonehenge, each bridge waking. The orb spun, projecting a warning in glyphs. The covenant breaks. The Watchers return. A roar echoed not from the chamber, but from above. The pyramid's summit erupted in light, and through the shaft, Elena glimpsed shapes descending sleek, angular, not helicopters, but OCAF, their hulls glinting like obsidian. Stahl paled, his confidence cracking. What the hell? Before he could finish, the orb pulsed again, and the chamber's floor cracked open, revealing an abyss of swirling light. Elena felt it pull, just like Palenque's rift, but stronger, wilder. Sophia shouted, "It's the bridge! We can't let him take it." Miguel hurled his stone, catching a soldier in the jaw, but Stahl lunged for the orb. Elena tackled him, their bodies slamming into the pedestal. The orb wobbled, then shot upward, vanishing into the shaft. A deafening boom shook the chamber, and the rift below widened, sucking air like a vortex. Stahl clawed at Elena, his eyes wild. "You've doomed us all," he snarled, but she kicked free, grabbing Sophia and Miguel as the chamber collapsed. They leaped into the rift, the world dissolving into light and chaos. When they landed, it was on sand hot, golden, endless. The air shimmered with heat, and ahead loomed a pyramid, not Mayan but Egyptian, Giza. The orb hovered above its apex, its glow a beacon. Behind them, the rift snapped shut, stranding Stahl, or so she hoped. Elena stood, sand clinging to her sweat-soaked skin. Sophia stared at the orb, her voice hushed. The Watchers, they're coming. Miguel spat into the dust. Let 'em. We've got the fight of our lives now. The orb pulsed, and in the distance, the sky darkened not with clouds, but with shapes, descending fast. The bridges were open, the seed was awake, and whatever Pakal had guarded, it was no longer a secret. The desert wind whipped across the Giza plateau, stinging Elena's face with sand as she shielded her eyes against the orb's searing glow. It hovered above the Great Pyramid's apex, a beacon pulsing with golden light, its hum a deep, resonant call that vibrated through the earth. Sophia stood beside her, silver hair plastered with sweat, her machete dangling loosely in her hand as she stared at the darkening sky. Miguel limped forward, clutching his ribs, his defiance unshaken despite the exhaustion etched into his face. "What now, Doctora?" he rasped. "We've got company coming, and I'm out of rocks." Elena's gaze flicked upward. The shapes descending from the sky were no longer distant specks, they were craft, sleek and obsidian black, their hulls catching the fading sunlight like polished mirrors. Dozens of them, fanning out in a silent, deliberate formation. The Watchers, the glyphs, had warned guardians or harbingers, she couldn't tell. The orb's light flared brighter, and the ground trembled, a low rumble rising from the pyramid beneath their feet. The bridges were awake, the seeds scattered across the earth, igniting one by one. And whatever Pakal had set in motion centuries ago was reaching its endgame. "We need to understand it," Elena said, her voice steady, despite the chaos brewing around them. She pulled the slab from her pack, its golden lines dim, but still alive, and pressed it against the pyramid stone. "The orb's part of the network. If we control it, we stop, Stahl, or whatever's coming." Sophia nodded, her epigrapher's mind racing. The glyphs said the seed is life. Maybe it's not just power, it's a safeguard, a balance. Pakal didn't hide it to hoard it, he hid it to protect it. A sharp crack split the air. The rift they'd escaped through shimmered open again, spitting out Stahl and a handful of his remaining men, their tactical gear torn and bloodied. His silver hair was matted with dust, the scar on his cheek glistening raw, but his eyes burned with a manic intensity. He leveled his pistol at Elena, his voice a snarl. "You think you've won? The Orders waited 500 years for this. That orb belongs to us, to humanity's future." His men fanned out, rifles trained, but their movements were sluggish, rattled by whatever they'd faced in Teotihuacan's collapse. Elena stepped forward, the slab warm in her hands. "You don't get it, Stahl. It's not yours to take. Pakal didn't build this for conquest, he built it to keep something out." She gestured to the sky, where the craft now hovered, silent and ominous, their hulls beginning to glow with faint, eerie runes. Stahl's smirk faltered, but he shook his head. "Superstition. Power's power. Step aside, or I end this now." Before she could respond, the orb pulsed again, and the pyramid groaned. A seam split the summit, revealing a chamber beneath a mirror of Palenque's void, its walls alive with crystalline veins and glyphs that spiraled in frantic patterns. The orb descended, slotting into a pedestal at the chamber's heart, and a holographic display erupted. Earth, its nodes blazing Palenque, Teotihuacan, Giza, and beyond, linked by threads now thrumming with energy. Pakal's voice rang out, clear and commanding. "The seed is sown. The covenant holds. The Watchers judge." The craft above unleashed a sound, a deep, bone-shaking drone that drove Stahl's men to their knees, clutching their ears. Elena staggered, but held her ground, the slab anchoring her as the chamber's walls pulsed faster. Sophia shouted over the noise, "It's a test! The bridge is there a lock, and the orb's the key." Miguel, grimacing, hauled himself up. So we turn it off? Or fight? Elena's mind raced. The Watchers weren't attacking, not yet. They hovered, their runes glowing brighter, as if waiting. She studied the hologram. The nodes weren't just sights, they were anchors. A grid stabilizing something vast. The seed wasn't a weapon or a treasure. It was a shield, a network woven into the Earth's ancient places to hold back whatever lay beyond the stars. Pakal had crossed the abyss, seen it, and left this to ensure it stayed sealed. But the Order's greed and her own curiosity had cracked it open. Stahl lunged for the orb, shoving past his dazed soldiers. "It's mine," he roared, but Elena intercepted him, slamming the slab into his chest. They grappled, tumbling toward the pedestal, the orb's light blinding. "You'll destroy us all," she spat, clawing at his grip. He laughed, a wild, broken sound. Better to rule the ashes than bow to myths. He wrested the slab free, raising it to smash the orb, but Miguel tackled him, his wounded frame fueled by sheer will. The slab skittered across the floor, and Stahl's pistol fired, the shot grazing Miguel's shoulder. Sophia dove for the slab, sliding it back to Elena. "Do it!" she yelled. Elena slammed it into the pedestal beside the orb, her hands guided by instinct. The glyphs aligned pyramid, stars, a final symbol, Kol, holy or complete. The chamber flared, a shockwave hurling Stahl back as the hologram shifted. Bakal's image reappeared, his eyes piercing. The bridge closes. The seed sleeps. Choose, child of Earth. The craft above descended closer, their drone softening to a hum. Elena felt the weight of it, the choice. Activate the orb fully, and the Watchers might claim the Earth, deeming humanity unworthy. Shut it down, and the network might collapse, leaving them defenseless if the Beyond ever returned. She glanced at Sophia, her face lined with resolve. Then Miguel, bleeding but unbowed. They'd fought too hard to lose now. She pressed the slab deeper, twisting it until the orb dimmed, its glow fading to a soft pulse. The hologram flickered out, Bakal's voice a whisper. The covenant holds, the chamber sealed, the pyramid's seam closing with a grinding thud. Above, the craft paused, their runes dimming, then ascended in unison, vanishing into the sky like stars winking out. The air stilled, the desert silent save for the wind. Stahl lay crumpled, his pistol lost, his men scattered or unconscious. He glared at Elena, defeated but defiant. "You've damned us," he croaked. She knelt beside him, her voice cold. "No, I saved us. Whatever's out there, Pakal trusted us to keep it at bay, not to invite it in." She stood, turning to Sophia and Miguel. "Let's go." They limped down the pyramid as dawn broke, painting Giza in hues of gold and rose. The orb and slab were buried now, sealed beneath stone, the network dormant but intact, a silent guardian woven into the Earth's bones. Miguel leaned on Sophia, his grin faint. "Think they'll write songs about us, Doctora?" She smirked. "Only if we tell them." Days later, they sat in a cramped cafe in Cairo, nursing coffee and bruises. Sophia pored over her notes, sketching the glyphs from memory. The Watchers judged us worthy this time, but the seed's still out there, in every node. Someone else might wake it again. Elena sipped her drink, the weight of the slab's absence a quiet ache. "Then we'll be ready. Pakal left us the keys, we just have to guard them." News trickled in. Stahl had vanished, his men rounded up by authorities, tipped off by an anonymous call Sophia's doing, no doubt. The Order of the Obsidian Veil was crippled, its leader a ghost, but Elena knew shadows lingered. She'd seen the Beyond, felt its pull, and understood Pakal's burden. The Earth was safe, not because the threat was gone, but because they'd chosen to let it sleep. Outside, the Nile glittered under the sun, a ribbon of life threading through the desert. Elena leaned back, exhaustion giving way to a hard-won peace. The heavens had woken, and they'd stared back unblinking, resolute. The story wasn't over. Not really. But for now, the bridge was closed, the covenant intact, and that was enough.